Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is a descendant of the Uchiha and able to accept the Uchiha and bring glory back to the clan. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Rain poured down heavily onto the streets, sending villagers running for cover under shops and into their homes. Just minutes ago it was a sunny day in this peaceful village. Civilians and shinobi were mingling in the vast streets of this prosperous village. This village was none other than the Konohagakure no Sado, a village founded by the legends Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. Konoha was known as the strongest of the 5 great hidden villages. It had the scars to prove it, surviving through 3 great shinobi world wars. This plane of greatness couldn't have been achieved without great sacrifice and its own share of secrets. Footsteps splashed through puddles as a small group of Anbu ran into a small alley. The Anbu scanned the alley but didn't see who they were looking for. He's not here, let's move on. The Anbu squad leader motioned his team and they dispersed. After a moment a hooded figure revealed itself from the shadows of the adjacent wall. The figure let out a sigh and reached up and removed his black hood, revealing the face of Naruto Uzumaki. The village sacrifice, container of the 9-tailed demon fox. Like most Jinchuriki, he is shunned by most of society. His presence brings constant reminders to those who lost their life during the Kyuubi attack. Despite his young age, Uzumaki was no fool. He was well aware of the seal on his stomach and what it contained. The villagers and some of the shinobi would send him glares filled with hatred. They didn't physically harm him except one incident when he was of the age of 4. A pair Chunin decided to set fire his home while he was still inside. He still had the burn mark on his shoulder as a reminder. Though he was confused why it didn't fully heal like any other injury he had gotten. Naruto was a difficult person to find nowadays if he truly didn't want to be found. Not by the villagers nor by most of the Hokage's Anbu. He preferred to be alone. In a world of lies and despair, seclusion was his armor, his strength. It allowed him to view others from the outside in. Attachments could lead to betrayal and pain. These were the truths of the shinobi world that he learned early in life. But despite his firm belief in these truths, there was a part of him that felt lonely. He remembered the last wishes of his deceased uncle. He wanted him to form bonds and become an honorable shinobi, but most of all he wanted him to find peace and happiness in this world. He wanted to honor those wishes, but how could he do that with so many unanswered questions still haunting him? His uncle's killer was still walking this earth for all he knew. And his instincts told him that someone in the village had to be involved. Who? He didn't know. Then there was the mystery of his parents' death. The unexpected attack by the Kyuubi caused the death of his parents. But was it really unexpected? Was this just an act of fate? Tragedy struck people all the time in this world, that was fate. But why did he get the feeling that there was more to it than that? He needed answers. Also there was the Uchiha, his clan, his accursed clan. His uncle told him to stay as far as away from them. Thinking about his uncle, he couldn't help but think back to the day he met the man who changed his life. Flashback. The 5-year-old Naruto sat atop a stone head of the late Yondaime Hokage, observing the carefree villagers go about their daily routines. Life looked so simple for them, just going through the motions they do every day with a smile. He wondered what that felt like. He shook his head. He didn't want to think depressing thoughts. That's not why he came up here for. A figure in a white robe and a white fox mask crept up behind Naruto. Caught up in his own thoughts he didn't notice. The figure spoke, making itself known. Naruto, my boy, the time has finally come. I finally get to meet you. Though I wish it was not in this godforsaken village. Naruto quickly turned around to find the source of the voice. He was surprised that someone managed to sneak up on him and quickly took a defensive stance. Whoa, calm down little one, I see, you've been training on your own huh? Not a bad stance for a little gaki. He praised with a smile. Naruto took a step back, his eyes scanned left and right for a possible escape. Who are you and what do you want with me? Naruto asked the masked man cautiously. The masked man took off his mask, revealing the face of a man with long red hair kept in a ponytail and light purple eyes. He looked to be in his early 40s. My name is Musashi Uzumaki, and I'm here to see my last close relative and give you the answers you seek, Musashi said, giving Naruto a knowing look. Naruto was shocked. I'm related to this man. He thought. As far as he knew all of his family was dead. Musashi saw his expression and spoke up. I see you're confused my boy, let's start with the thing you wanted to know the most, your heritage. Naruto gave him a calculating look with some weariness. People have tried to lie to him before. His first instincts were to call him a liar, a fraud. He was an orphan with no family. This was nothing but a deceitful ruse. It had to be. But why did he get this strange feeling in his gut? Who was this man? Musashi frowned upon seeing the weariness in Naruto's eyes. It was understandable and expected given that he seemingly came out of nowhere. But what really broke his heart was the loneliness he saw in the boy's eyes. He clenched his fist. The village had truly failed him. "Naruto, I know you must feel some doubt in my words, but please let me explain," he said softly. Naruto hesitated but gave him a small nod, causing him to smile. "You see, your mother is Kushina Uzumaki, my little sister." Naruto's eyes widened. Kushina. What a beautiful name, he thought to himself. Was he telling the truth? Could this man really had known his mother? Also, he said they all share the same last name. Did this mean that I'm from a clan? As if Musashi knew what he was thinking. "Yes, my boy, the Uzumaki are a clan from the now destroyed land of whirlpools." Before Naruto could speak again, Musashi put his hand up. "I'll tell you more about them some other time. For now let me tell you who your father was. He was none other than Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage." Naruto mind froze. The Yadaime Hokage was his father. Tears streamed down his face, his body shaking. Unlike his mother, he already had face to put next to name of his father. Everyone knew the Yadaime Hokage. To learn that a hero of Konoha was in fact his father was too overwhelming for him to control his emotions. "The Hokage only told me that my parents died during the Nine Tails attack and left nothing for me," Naruto said through his sobs. Musashi's eyes softened and went forward to embrace his crying nephew. Before he could embrace him, Naruto looked up at him. His eyes filled with anger. "Why? Why didn't the Hokage tell me? And why weren't you there for me?" A tear slid down Musashi's face. He hated seeing his nephew like this. He felt guilty for not being able to be there for him earlier and anger towards Hiruzen. He looked down at Naruto and spoke softly. "I know you angry, Naruto, and you have every right to be, but there is an explanation for this, just listen for a moment." Naruto didn't let up on his glare, but Musashi could tell he was at least willing to listen. "When I got word of your parents passing during the Kyuubi attack, I came to the village to see if you had survived. When I found out you were alive, I demanded that you be given to me to be looked after outside of the village. After some convincing, I got Hiruzen to agree, but those damn elders wouldn't allow it and said you were the village's property." Musashi spat with distaste. Naruto clenched his fist and looked down. "I know the Hokage wouldn't stand up to the elders, so I settled for the next best thing. I made him agree to let me take you after you turned 10. I knew the village wanted you to grow up in Konoha so you would stay loyal, but I made him promise that you would be taken care of. When I learned that old bastard didn't keep you safe like I asked, I decided that I would look after you myself." In the shadows, Naruto walked down the alley, not caring about the rain that soaked his clothes. His mind started to wander, thinking about how his life started to change for the better after meeting his uncle. For the first time he had actually family. Someone who could look after him, love him, although only in the shadows. But that was more than enough for him. It was surreal how one moment could change your life for the better, then another reverse it. Flashback. After a long training session, Naruto slumped down against a training log, exhausted. Musashi smiled proudly at him. His work ethic amazing. He started to train Naruto in the shinobi arts and discovered that he was quite the little genius, soaking up everything like a sponge. He thought his strong genes had something to do with it. Speaking of his heritage, it was time he filled Naruto in fully. Musashi sat down next to him, getting Naruto's attention. "Naruto, it's time I tell you the rest of your heritage." Naruto looked at him curiously. "The rest of my heritage?" Musashi nodded. "First let me tell you the history of the Uzumaki. The Uzumaki are blood relatives with the old Senju clan. They were allies before the founding of the great shinobi villages. Konoha has adopted the clan symbol into their uniform as a sign of friendship. Unfortunately, the Senju are no longer among us. The only one left is Tsunade's Senju of the Sannin." Naruto was surprised. He knew how prestigious the Senju were. The Sharingan and Nidaime Hokages both hailed from that powerful clan. But he was truly unprepared for what his uncle had to say next. Musashi's expression turned serious. "Listen closely. Although I'm not too fond of the Uchiha, I owe it to you to tell you the truth. You also have Uchiha blood running through your veins," Musashi said, shocking Naruto to the core. The Uchiha, unlike the Senju, were still around in numbers and were one of the most prestigious clans in Konoha. Why was he not with them? Why didn't they come and claim him? Unless they know he didn't want to think about that possibility. "You said my mother was in Uzumaki and my dad was the Yadaime. I can't be an Uchiha," Naruto said flatly. Musashi could understand Naruto's logic. It obviously didn't add up, but he could also sense that Naruto didn't want it to be true because he thought that would mean the clan abandoned him. "You're right, your mother is in Uzumaki, however there is more to her blood, our blood that many people don't know about. Long ago our great-grandmother married into the Uchiha clan. She married Imizuto Uchiha, the brother of the renowned Tajima Uchiha." Naruto looked confused and decided to voice it. "I don't understand, I thought the Uchiha felt they were above every other clans, so why would they marry in Uzumaki?" "You're right, but some Uchihas noted the Senju's relationship with the Uzumaki clan and thought highly of the clan, so they decided to spread their influence through marriage." Musashi paused for a moment, then continued. "Not all Uchiha clan members supported this idea. In fact, most of them didn't. And of course many in the Uzumaki clan members didn't want anything to do with the Uchiha either. Then how did this marriage come to be? Naruto asked. Simple true love, Musashi said while chuckling at how cliché it sounded. But love was something that could still be found in the dark shinobi world. What first was a marriage to strengthen the clan became true love between them. The marriage was kept secret because they wanted to avoid the chaos the opposition would bring. Musashi looked Naruto seriously. Now listen, the bloodline of the Uchiha has been very recessive throughout your family. No one in our family as far as I know has been able to awaken the Sharingan, so the chance of you doing it are extremely slim. Naruto sighed as he looks up at the pouring, graying sky. Thinking about his uncle made his heart ache. The last thing he wanted to do was open up old wounds. He didn't need that. Musashi taught him better than that. He taught him how to be strong. A shinobi had to endure. He knew he would need to become stronger to complete his goals. His relatives were dead, but he knew that wasn't entirely the case. He felt mixed emotions about that, and it confused him, but deep down he knew what he was. He pulled his hood on and made his out of the alley. If one was to look into his hood, they would see a pair of red Sharingan eyes staring back at them. For he was an Uchiha. Naruto got up before sunrise like he always did, a habit that his uncle drilled into him. He headed towards a secluded training ground deep in Konoha's forest. Technically only shinobi had access to official training grounds, but something trivial like that wouldn't stop him. It's been a year since his uncle's death and Naruto continued his training on his own. At the age of 7 he is strong for his age. His uncle had taught him how to draw his chakra and control it to a level that was better than those in the academy. Chakra control was difficult for Naruto, as it was for most Jinchuriki. Despite this he learned to control his chakra at an impressive rate considering his Jinchuriki status. He learned the basics of all forms of the shinobi arts. Musashi had taught him shuriken jutsu, ninjutsu, taijutsu, stealth, survival skills, and shinobi tactics and strategies. Naruto would easily be called a genius by any standard. He was always calm and attentive, traits fitting of a true shinobi. But he also had a playful and competitive side to him that only Musashi could seem to bring out. His uncle's death has made him more secluded and a distant person. Naruto pushed forward determined to become stronger. What was truly a shocking revelation was Naruto's ability to awaken the Sharingan despite having recessive genes for it. He remembered the day he awakened it. Flashback, Naruto was training with Musashi in taijutsu and Naruto was desperately trying to avoid Musashi's lighting quick strikes. Naruto ducked under a punch and barely avoided a quick follow-up kick towards his midsection. Musashi quickly appeared behind Naruto and kicked his back, sending him forward. Naruto staggered but quickly regained his footing and lashed out with a series of combos that Musashi easily dodged. You're going to have to do better than that, Naruto. Don't think I'm going to go easy on you, Musashi taunted. Musashi increased his speed and appeared on Naruto's left side and landed a punch in his face. Naruto tried to retaliate, but Musashi quickly appeared on his right and sent another punch to his face. Naruto was getting pounded, he couldn't keep up with Musashi's speed. Musashi then sent an uppercut towards Naruto's jaw. Naruto suddenly felt a tingling sensation in his eyes and saw Musashi's fist coming at him at a slower motion. He saw it perfectly and tilted his head away from the punch and also dodged a follow-up right hook. Musashi gasped when Naruto dodged his punch and saw a pair of single-tome Sharingan staring back at him. The Sharingan, Musashi whispered. Flashback end. Naruto checked if there was anyone in the area. After feeling no other presence he stepped into the open field, then looked at his right forearm. There was a very elaborate seal on his arm with a Uzumaki swirl in the center. His uncle had placed this elaborate seal on his arm right before he breathed his last breaths. Looking at the seal, it was bittersweet. It reminded him too much of Musashi that hurt just looking at it. At the same time he knew couldn't ignore it, it was his uncle's dying gift. Even in death he was still guiding him. He never got the chance to explain what the seal was for, saying in time all would be revealed. Musashi worked in mysterious ways and even though he was perceptive, at times he couldn't figure his uncle out. Naruto had only basic knowledge in seals from what Musashi was beginning to teach him, but from what he could tell the seal had many compartments. The only one he could figure out thus far was a blood sealing scroll. In it held scrolls for all forms of the shinobi arts from ninjutsu to kenjutsu. Musashi left some of his teachings for Naruto in these scrolls. For that Naruto was grateful. Naruto ran his hand over the seal and unsealed his most prized possession, his uncle's sword. Whirling tides, his uncle called it. He had seen Musashi wield it so many times in their training. He remembered the first time he unsealed it from his seal he was brought to tears. Musashi lived on through this sword and he would cherish it. The sword was a broadsword, a type of weapon that was not commonly used. It had a golden hilt with Uzumaki crest engraved into the pommel. The blade itself was pitch black and center fuller of the sword was blood red. The guard was made of 2 silver dragon heads parallel to each other. The hilt had small seals running along it that were used to store iron and used a unique fuinjutsu formula to repair itself. The blade left off an elegant shine when it moved through the light and was a true masterpiece. Naruto gripped the sword with both hands and went through the katas that Musashi had shown him. He couldn't swing the sword with the same grace that he had seen his uncle did countless times. But he wasn't deterred, he would get better in time. He swore he would, he felt he needed to in order to honor his deceased uncle. As he continued to train, he suddenly felt a rise of chakra signatures moving at a fast pace. He turned and looked towards the direction of the chakra signatures. They felt strong, defiantly Jonin level, Naruto thought. He decided to investigate and slowly made his way out of the training ground. Naruto suddenly heard a scream, "Ah, you bastards, you got my arm." Naruto quickened his pace once he heard the scream. Naruto made his way towards a clearing and crouched down beside a bush. He concealed his chakra to the best of his ability, which was not easy given his large reserves. He suddenly saw a man wearing what he recognized as a Jonin vest, crashing through the trees and hit the ground hard. The man looked young and had shoulder-length brown hair and brown eyes. He was panting heavily and looked to be in pain. The source of his pain was fairly obvious, as the left side of his vest was ripped, revealing his burnt torso. His left arm also burnt and bleeding. Naruto narrowed his eyes. A strong Kaiten jutsu, he thought. Suddenly 3 more figures leaped out of the trees. Naruto's eyes widened when he realized who they were. The 3 figures had similar distinguishing features. They were all male and had dark eyes. 2 of them had dark hair, while 1 had gray hair. Each of them wore a green Konoha flak jacket. But what made Naruto recognize who these men were was the crest on their shoulder of their vest. Instead of the Uzumaki swirl, there was a blue 4-point star with the Uchiha crest in the middle. These men were members of the Konoha military police force. Naruto closed his eyes and clenched fist. "Uchiha," he whispered. Flashback, "The Uchiha are my clansmen, uncle, why can't I be with them as well?" Musashi sighed and looked Naruto right in the eyes. "Look, Naruto, the Uchiha are your clansmen as well, but it's for your best interest and well-being that you stay away," said Musashi seriously. Naruto narrowed his eyes but said nothing. Musashi gaze softened. "I know you've been lonely, Naruto, and you wish to try to reconcile with your cousins," Musashi said slowly. "Now would be a bad time to reveal your Uchiha heritage to them," said Musashi. "You see, the Uchiha are showing more signs of aggression as of late. They are seeking to increase their power and influence in the village. Do you think they will do something dangerous?" Naruto said with a frown. Musashi sighed. "Honestly, I'm not sure, my boy. But what I do know is that the Uchiha have always been power-hungry and extremely prideful," Musashi said a little heatedly. "But I can see some of that Uchiha pride in you already, Naruto. Always trying to perfect your skills in training, and you become moody when you can't land a hit on me," Musashi said with a small smirk. Naruto scratched the back of his head embarrassingly, but gave a small smile. "The Uchiha didn't treat you any better than any of the rest of the village, did they? And you still haven't gotten over it, have you?" Musashi asked. Naruto lowered his head and closed his eyes. "You think that if you reveal your heritage to them they will accept you?" Musashi asked. Naruto clenched his fist. He knew that it was superficial, but they were still his family, right? Musashi's face turned serious. "The Uchiha will not give you the love of a family you desire," said Musashi seriously. Naruto's eyes widened and he looked up at Musashi. "They are aware of what you contain, and once you reveal your Uchiha heritage, Fugaku, the clan head, will no doubt claim you. Age Jinchuriki with the Uchiha Kekkei Genkai will no doubt be seen as a powerful asset," Musashi lectured. "I'm sorry, Naruto, but the truth is that your freedom will be taken from you. They will train you like a tool and watch your every move to make sure no harm comes to you and that you stay loyal. We won't be able to see each other anymore," Musashi said sadly. Naruto shook his head and clenched his fist. "That's not what I want," he said harshly. Musashi smiled. "I know," he said softly, "but you have me, I'm your family." Naruto let a single tear fall from his eye and said, "I know." Then flashback, Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. "I know," he thought, then continued to look on at the scene in front of him. The 3 Uchiha quickly landed on the ground and surrounded the injured Jonin. "Kashimotojin, for assaulting a leaf shinobi and trying to access the restricted jutsu arsenal, you are to be detained under the order of the military police force," said the tallest of the 3 Uchihas. The Jonin had a look of fear in his eyes as the 3 Uchihas approached him. How did find me? I covered all my tracks, I was perfect," yelled the Chunin. The 3 police force members glanced at each other, then smirked. "Fool, do you really think you could outsmart the police force? We are elites," said one of the Uchihas. "We've been tracking your movements for a week now, we just needed to wait to catch you in the act," said the 3rd Uchiha. Naruto looked on in interest at the scene unfolding in front of him. The Jonin shakily stood up and glared at the Uchiha. "You don't have me yet," the Jonin yelled and threw 3 Kuani at them. Then quickly went through a series of hand seals, water-style water bullet, he yelled. The 1st Uchiha was the first to move and step forward and deflected the kunai with his own. The 2nd Uchiha quickly went through a set of hand seals, Kaiten Kakek no Jutsu, fire-style fireball jutsu. The 2 jutsus collided and a heavy steam cloud was formed. The third Uchiha used the steam as cover and appeared behind the Jonin, armed with ninja wire. Before the Jonin could use a substitution jutsu, he found himself bound by the metal wire. The Uchiha then unleashed a low-level fire jutsu down the wire, making sure not to kill the Jonin. Ahhhhh, the Jonin screamed as he was engulfed by the flames. The shock of the attack caused him to become unconscious. The three Uchiha smirked and the Uchiha named Inabi Uchiha spoke and summarized what they were all thinking. TCH, stupid fool trying to take on the Uchiha clan, what a joke. Naruto was amazed by the quickness and efficiency of his clansmen. He had to admit it was impressive display. Yushiro, take this one back to headquarters, said Inabi. Yeah you lazy bastards, Yushiro mumbled. Yushiro, like the other two Uchihas, was a veteran member of the police force. Yushiro walked over to the bound and unconscious Jonin and picked him up, putting him over his shoulder. He then let out a grunt and shunshined away. Naruto saw that the tussle was over and slowly stood up and began to walk away. Inabi suddenly heard movement to his far left and smirked. Ha, you hear that, Yukumi? Someone thinks they can spy on the police force. The other Uchiha named Yukumi motioned his head towards the area the noise came from. Inabi nodded his head in response and they both quickly made their way towards the location of the noise. Naruto sensed their movements and inwardly cursed. How did he make sound? He was sure to be careful. He looked down and found his answer. A small tripwire that was thinner than usually and well hidden. Though it seemed not to be armed, left over from a field exercise, Naruto thought. Just as he finished that thought, the two Uchihas appeared in front of him. Look what we have here, it's the Kyuubi kid, said Inabi. The Kyuubi kid, huh? Wonder what he's doing here, said Yukumi in curiosity. Naruto remained silent and kept his calm, but inside he was worried. I'll tell you what this brat is doing here, he was trying to meddle in official Uchiha police force business, said Inabi with a sneer. Naruto continued to stay silent, hiding his panic. Well, aren't you going to say something? Yelled Inabi. Naruto then decided to speak up. I was just in the area, you'd best continue on with your police work, rather than standing here wasting air, Naruto said calmly. The Uchiha sneered, you hear that, Yukumi? This brat thinks he can tell an Uchiha what to do. I say we should teach him a lesson the hard way, Inabi said with a smirk. PSH, this is a waste of time, I have better things to do than play with this brat, said Yukumi dismissively. Shut up, nobody insults the Uchiha and gets away with it, especially some clans less, brat, Inabi cried. Naruto had to inwardly smirk at this, if only this fool knew, he thought before he was forced to dodge a punch and kick by Inabi. The strikes weren't at full strength and speed, as Inabi didn't think he needed to put much effort to land a hit on the blonde. He thought the blonde had no talent. Inabi noticed his strikes didn't connect and chuckled. Well, looks like this little brat does have some fight in him after all, said Inabi. Yukumi stepped forward and raised an eyebrow. This is bad, if he decides not to hold back there is no way I will win against a Jonin, and if the other one got involved as well, Naruto thought. Inabi suddenly appeared in front of Naruto and kicked him in the chest, sending him flying back. Naruto got back up and blocked a follow-up punch with his forearms crossed, but force broke through his guard. Naruto felt the wind get knocked out him and he fell to his knees. Naruto slowly got up and sent a kick towards Inabi's chest. Inabi grabbed the leg with amusement and pulled Naruto towards him, then punched him in the nose. Naruto hit the ground, his nose bloody from the force of the punch. Damn, he won't give me the chance to escape and there is no way I can beat him, Naruto thought. Hell, I'll admit you're pretty good for a young brat, but you're still just trash compared to an elite. Now I will finish you and show you what happens to those who mess with the Uchiha, yelled Inabi. Naruto knew he wasn't going to win this fight, he thought over his options and he realized that fighting was his only option. He didn't want to reveal his secret, but he felt as his life was in danger now if Inabi was serious with his threat to finish him. Consequences be damn, he won't hold back. Inabi charged forward and was at Naruto's side in an instant. Naruto closed his eyes and when Inabi appeared in front of him he opened his eyes revealing his red Sharingan eyes. Inabi saw Naruto's eyes and was so shocked he froze mid-strike, allowing Naruto to land a punch in Inabi's stomach. Inabi stumbled back's loyalty, but he didn't even register the punch due to his shock. Yukumi was in a similar state as he too was frozen stiff with both his eyes widened. DTHTH, the Sharingan, Inabi whispered while stuttering. Naruto thought revealing his Sharingan was bad, but he felt he didn't have any choice. He saw the state the other two Uchihas were in and decided that fleeing would be a better option than fighting. His thoughts were broken when Inabi broke out of his shock and shouted, "The Sharingan, it can't be, you dare mock us. What kind of trick is this, Kyuubi brat?" Inabi went to charge again, but suddenly stopped as two kunai hit ground, inches in front of him. Inabi was going to start to go berserk on the person who dare interfere with the police force when his eyes widened seeing two figures standing behind Naruto. The first figure on the right had onyx eyes and dark black hair that was in a ponytail tucked in his dark blue shirt. He wore blue bottoms and a Konoha headband on his forehead. He had tear troughs lines under his eyes and his gaze was cold and fierce. The person next to him also had onyx-colored eyes and black hair, but his hair was short. He wore a black high-collared shirt with blue bottoms. He wore a Konoha headband and had a tanto strapped on his back. His gaze was also fierce. Itachi Shisui Anabi stuttered out. Itachi and Shisui looked at Anabi sternly, then looked at Yakumi and narrowed their eyes. They noticed that he had yet to move from his position and still had a look of shock on his face. Naruto felt the presence of two people behind. He was also frozen at the feel of two shinobi slightly releasing their energy. Whoever these two were, they were in another league compared to the two Uchihas in front of him. Itachi and Shisui followed Yakumi's gaze and found that it was not them he was staring at, but the young blonde behind them. They were slightly surprised and turned around to face the blonde. Naruto in his slightly frozen state failed to deactivate his Sharingan and looked up and met the Uchiha duo gaze. Itachi looked into Naruto's eyes, his own eyes widening at the sight of Naruto's Sharingan, but they quickly narrowed. Instead of saying anything he settled for giving Naruto an intense stare. Shisui's eyes also widened to full mast and his mouth was slightly open upon seeing the blonde Sharingan. Both Uchihas activated their Sharingan to make sure it was not some sort of elaborated genjutsu. They both found no deception and found it to be the real deal. Yakumi Uchiha, being in a daze the entire time, finally spoke up. Itachi, Shisui, what's going on here? Itachi and Shisui quickly compassed themselves and assessed the situation. They gave each other a discreet signal and moved into action. Shisui looked into both the eyes of Yakumi and Anabi, with both his Sharingan eyes spinning. His Sharingan quickly formed into a square-shaped shuriken with a circle in the center and a smaller circle within the first. Itachi then moved in a blur and appeared behind both Uchihas and knocked them out. It happened so fast Naruto couldn't track them. Itachi laid both Yakumi and Anabi on the ground gently, while Shisui sinested for any incoming shinobi in the area. He felt the presence of two shinobi approaching quickly, their chakra felt familiar. He identified them as his clansmen. He glanced at Itachi who gave him a nod in return. Itachi quickly grasped Naruto's shoulder and disappeared in a sunshine. Shisui followed Itachi and did the same. They appeared on a small mountain cliff surrounded by larger and denser trees. Naruto was still slightly dazed from moving so quickly. He regained his bearings and found Itachi and Shisui staring at him. Naruto's mind was racing. Okay, I'm in the presence of two powerful Uchihas and they brought me to a secluded area. Does this mean they will try to harm me? No, they would have done it already, plus they saved me, Naruto thought. Shisui saw Naruto's nervousness and he couldn't blame him. Relax, we aren't here to hurt you, we just want to talk, Shisui said with a smile. Naruto relaxed a little but still was slightly on edge. Itachi noticed Naruto's nose was bleeding and spoke, "You're hurt, stand still for a moment." Itachi walked forward and placed his palm above Naruto's nose. Naruto tensed a little, but quickly calmed himself when he identified Itachi's green chakra as medical ninjutsu. He had seen his uncle use this jutsu on him many times after a long training session. Itachi, being an Anbu, is required to learn basic medical ninjutsu. Naruto felt his nose being healed, he then started to think about the repercussions of his Sharingan being revealed. That's four Uchihas who had seen my Sharingan already, one of them will no doubt tell the clan head, Naruto thought. You don't need to worry about those two Uchihas knowing about your Sharingan because I erased their memory of what transpired, Shisui said kindly. Naruto's eyes widened at this revelation, he was amazed at Shisui's ocular prowess. After a moment Naruto then narrowed his eyes. What about the two of you, Naruto asked. Shisui laughed and ruffled Naruto's hair, much to Naruto's annoyance. Don't worry, we won't tell anyone, Shisui said joyfully. But we will need you to start explaining, Naruto said Itachi stoically. Naruto sighed, he knew there was no avoiding it now and it was best he tell them. Well, to put it bluntly, I'm an Uchiha. Naruto said calmly. Everything went silent after that. Itachi merely stared him, his face expressionless. Shisui had an amused look on his face. After a few seconds of silence Shisui started chuckling lightly. You don't say, Shisui said through chuckles. Naruto's left eye twitched. Was he mocking him? You assume I'm an Uchiha because of my Sharingan, but how do you know my Sharingan are not implanted? Naruto asked. Ah, a sharp one, I see. Well, to answer your question, we would have known about it. If a member of the clan died or lost an eye, we would be made aware of it. All eyes from deceased members are collected and accounted for. Besides, the Hokage and the clan would have to approve on a Sharingan eye transplant first, Shisui stated matter-of-factly. Naruto nodded his head. Fair enough, but we live in a world of lies and deception. The fact that me, an Uchiha, was not accounted for by the clan is proof of that, said Naruto seriously. Shisui had a surprised look on his face. Itachi raised an eyebrow, he was deeply intrigued by Naruto's answer. This was not how a normal 7-year-old spoke. Naruto noticed that both Uchihas were staring at him once again. He sighed. They want an explanation, of course they do, but should I tell them? Naruto debated himself. He sighed, considering they already knew he was an Uchiha, it wouldn't hurt to tell them. So Naruto began to tell them what he knew of his heritage, excluding the fact that he was the Yonamen's son, but he had a feeling that they already knew this. As Naruto was telling his of lineage, Itachi's expression hadn't changed, but internally his mind was racing. He knew who Naruto's parents were, and that Kushina was of the Uzumaki clan, who were related to the Senju, but the Uchiha as well. This was stunning. He was not aware of this piece of information. Itachi knew the importance of learning history, it had a variety of uses. Even information that seemed minuscule at first glance could be of great importance later. It could give a shinobi a huge advantage on the battlefield. Or it could be used to gain the political advantages over others. Yes, knowledge was power, it is why Itachi made sure to learn as much as he could about his ancestors. To find out that he was not aware that his clan married into another at some point was surprising to say the least. That meant there was family line, they had both Uchiha and Uzumaki. That information would definitely be noted of great importance, but as far as he knew the clan had no record of this. Shisui was thinking the same thing, and he deduced that this must have been kept secret on purpose. And Naruto here is someone who is from that family line who is able to awaken the Sharingan, he thought in fascination. I see, but tell me Naruto, where did you obtain this information from? I'm sure Lord Hokage didn't tell you this. Itachi pried. Naruto clenched his fist. No, I learned it from someone else, someone I trust more than anyone, he replied. They don't need to know, he thought. Shisui raised an eyebrow, but Naruto kept silent. He realized he was not going to say anything more. Itachi had a good idea who Naruto was talking about. Truth be told, he was aware that Naruto was being looked after and trained by Musashi. He couldn't get close enough without Musashi detecting him, so he failed to learn of Naruto's Sharingan. So you're an Uchiha then? So tell me, how much do you know about our clan? Shisui asked curiously. Itachi was also curious about how much the boy knew about their clan. Naruto observed them for a moment, he decided to be frank with them. The Uchiha are a clan that rivaled the mighty Senju since before the founding of the village. Together with the Senju, they founded the village hidden in the leaves. The Uchiha clan is recognized as one of the 4 noble clans of Konoha. The Uchiha are a clan of warriors, you could say that fighting is in our blood. The Uchiha excel in all forms of combat, but their main strength lie in fire-style ninjutsu. And of course, Naruto's eyes changed from sapphire blue to blood red. The Sharingan. Itachi remained silent, but he was surprised how well informed the young blonde was. Shisui was grinning from ear to ear. Well, you certainly did your homework, Shisui said. Naruto sighed and spoke quietly, I can't deny that this makes me proud to be an Uchiha, but Naruto's eyes hardened. I also know that the Uchiha have grown arrogant and blind. Their desire for power has clouded their minds. Itachi and Shisui both were taken back by Naruto's anger. Naruto continued, they refuse to acknowledge others as they see it as a challenge to their superiority. The clan has developed a simple-minded ideology and it is being forced upon the next generation of Uchihas, Naruto said bitterly. Their arrogance has made them blind to their weaknesses, they think they're untouchable. And most importantly, the clan has forgotten why they founded the village along with the Senju. It was to create peace and end the power struggle. Yet now they are trying to gain power for all the wrong reasons. Their interests don't lie in the prosperity of the village, but only what they think is best for the clan. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. He looked up at Shisui's awe-struck expressions and Itachi's slightly widened eyes. Naruto smirked. Now don't look at me like that, after all you both feel the same way, right? Naruto asked with a raised brow. This kid, no way. Shisui thought. Itachi narrowed his, he wanted to further test Naruto's perception. What do you mean? He asked with mock bewilderment. Naruto looked Itachi in the eyes, then into Shisui's, before casting his gaze back to Itachi. Your eyes the way you both looked at the 2 Uchihas before, with distaste and even sorrow? Naruto asked while tilting his head. Shisui and Itachi shared a look. This mere child left them truly astonished, a feat not many could accomplish. It was then that Itachi realized something. Naruto was more than just sharp, as Shisui put it earlier. No, Naruto was on a different level. For a mere boy to see what an entire clan of elite shinobi couldn't, it was truly mind-boggling. Naruto was no ordinary Uchiha, he was an idealist, it reminded him of himself. That thought made Itachi smile, a true smile, something Itachi only gave his brother these days. But to think this boy was hidden all this time, that did not sit well with him and made him worried too about who else knew of this. Shisui looked at Naruto closely, there was something strange about him. Something that made him believe that this boy would one day be very important to the shinobi world one day. For the better or worse, Itachi saw something else in Naruto. Just as Naruto read his emotions through his eyes, he mirrored it and saw hidden pain and hatred in the boy's eyes. You certainly are different than the other children, Naruto, but there is more to you, isn't there? Itachi questioned. Naruto looked at Itachi curiously. They say through a person's eyes, you can see their soul, do you know what I see in your eyes? Itachi asked. Naruto remained quiet but flinched from Itachi's intense gaze. I see sorrow, pain, and even hatred. Itachi could tell Naruto was strong mentally, but he was still a child who suffered through dramatic experiences. He wanted to see how Naruto would react. You say these things about the clan, but you still feel hatred because they have not accepted you. Naruto's eyes widened and he took a step back. Itachi, what are Shisui was cut off by Itachi. Have you made peace with yourself? Naruto froze. What is he saying? He thought frantically. Naruto took another step back and glared at Itachi. You don't know anything about me. He yelled. Shisui saw that Naruto was uncomfortable and put on Itachi's shoulder. That's enough, Itachi. Itachi looked at Shisui's face and saw his growing anger. But Itachi's own expression didn't change. Shisui could see that Naruto was slightly afraid. Something about Itachi's words must have hit sore spot in the boy. He decided to change the subject. Naruto, you were pretty brave standing up against those police force members. How about we teach you a thing or two? After all, who would be better qualified to teach an Uchiha than another Uchiha? He asked with a disarming grin. Naruto looked at them both and shook his head. I'm not interested, besides I'm busy, he said in a harsh tone. Naruto slowly walked off, stopping to look back at them once before continuing on his way. The two Uchihas watched Naruto walk off in silence. Once Shisui saw that Naruto had left, he turned to Itachi. Itachi, what was that? He asked irritably. Itachi was silent for a moment, then looked at him and sighed. He needed to hear it, Itachi said simply. Itachi, what are you talking about? Shisui asked curiously. Itachi was not an easy man to understand. You saw it to Shisui, Naruto is suffering inside. Itachi replied. Well, of course he is, you told me about Musashi's death and all other things he had to deal with, Shisui said while giving Itachi a strange look as if he didn't understand where Itachi was going with this. Itachi shook his head. The problem is that he hasn't found his identity, he is confused. He's still young and can be driven down the wrong path despite what he believes in. Someone like him with such insight and talent can become dangerous, it only takes one slip, Itachi explained. Shisui sighed, right, his uncle's killer, no doubt he would want to avenge him, Shisui said sadly. Itachi nodded. And given what we learned about Naruto today, I have an idea of who might be involved in Musashi's death, Itachi said mysteriously. Shisui thought for a moment, then his eyes widened. You're not thinking about him, are you? Shisui asked apprehensively. Itachi gave him a knowing look. Yes, but we have no proof. In any case, we should keep eye on Naruto, Itachi replied. Oh, don't worry, I think he will come find us, after all, who could turn down this face, Shisui said pointing at his face. Itachi just stared at him blankly. Shisui noticed he would not be getting a rise out of Itachi and just started to walk away grumbling about stoic bastards. Itachi followed behind shortly with a small smirk. Oh yes, he secretly liked to piss off his friend. Shisui suddenly grinned, remembering the genjutsu he put on the two Uchihas earlier. Itachi noticed his expression and raised an eyebrow, but then shook his head, rather not knowing what mischief Shisui was thinking about. But Yushiro and Anabi, two police force members, arrived at the scene and looked at the unconscious Yushiro and Anabi in shock. They quickly shook them awake. Hey, wake up, who did this to you? They asked frantically. The two of them both woke up holding their heads, trying to remember their attacker. They both gasped in horror. Naked green beast. With Naruto made his way out of the forest and into the streets of Konoha. Truth be told, he didn't really consider what Shisui said, he just needed to get away for a moment. As mature as he was for his age, he is still a kid, he needed time to think. It all happened so fast, from getting up to train, to getting attacked by those Uchihas. Then there was Shisui and Itachi, they were interesting to say the least. He hid his surprise well when he was interacting with them, but inside he was deeply intrigued and somewhat intimidated. Those two were unlike any other Uchiha he'd met. From what he gathered, Shisui was laid back, but not cocky. You could just tell by looking at him, he gave a vibe there was definitely more to him, he reminded him of Musashi. As for Itachi, he was mysterious, he gave very little away. His gaze was intimidating and his demeanor was that of indifference. It would be hard for anyone to understand what he was actually thinking. But Naruto knew better to believe it was indifference. No, he was analyzing you, looking through you, it was unnerving. He witnessed this firsthand, Itachi saw right through him. He didn't feel comfortable talking about his past. He hated that Itachi could read his hidden emotions so easily. Naruto shook his head, he didn't want to think about it anymore. He continued on his path through the village. It was now late morning and there was heavy foot traffic in the streets. He walked through the crowds of people, his face covered by his brown hood. He had no true destination and he didn't need one. He could hear the loud voices of people conversing in the street and the laughter of children. He saw some kids tossing a ball back and forth. He noticed that they were about the same age as him. It was strange, he couldn't really picture himself doing things like that. He grew up fast, perhaps too fast. He stopped right in front of a small park. He heard voices coming from behind a tree with a small swing hanging from its branch. He kept hidden but close enough to see. There was a girl with dark blue hair and fair skin. She had pale eyes and wore black training clothing. Naruto recognized her instantly, how could he not? The Hyuga clan is one of the most prestigious clans of Konoha, therefore the daughter of Hiashi was well known in the village. This was Hinata Hyuga, heir to Hyuga clan. Surrounding her were three young kids who seemed to be harassing her. What confused him was that he could tell by the way the three boys carried themselves, they had basically no shinobi skill at all. Yet the Hyuga heiress was on the floor, helpless as they barraged her with insults. Wouldn't the heir to the Hyuga clan be better trained than this? He asked himself. The thought of her not being trained yet was unfathomable. Clans always train their own at young ages, noble clans even more so it was not that she was too weak to beat the three pathetic nuisances, but perhaps she couldn't do it mentally. Naruto shook his head, mental weakness can be just as bad if not worse than physically weakness. He was trained well enough to know that in a real battle, hesitation could be the difference between life and death. He knew she was young, and this wasn't really serious combat situation. Perhaps I should cut her some slack, he mused, but quickly shook that thought away. The shinobi world is too cruel to be soft. She is a clan heir, no doubt she will be forced to become a shinobi, she can't continue this way. He saw one of the boys come forward and kick her on her side. Please stop, Hinata breathed out in barely a whisper through her tears. Naruto sighed and shook his head. Suddenly he moved in what seemed to be only a blur to the other four. Hinata closed her eyes, then opened them when she heard three thumps. She looked down in shock at three boys laying on the ground, holding their heads in pain. She slowly looked up and her eyes widened when she saw Naruto looking at her with his azure blue eyes. Naruto looked down at her with an emotionless face. Hinata instantly blushed at his gaze, but was confused to what just happened. She then realized that it was the blonde-haired boy in front her that helped her. HEM moved so quickly, she thought. She took a closer look at him, and her blush deepened, her head lowered. He's so handsome, she thought while blushing. Naruto said nothing and just tilted his head as he watched the shy girl's expression change from shock to confusion, then to embarrassment. After a moment he spoke. Are you hurt? Hinata shook her head and no, she whispered. Good, but next time you might not be so lucky, you need to stand up for yourself, he said bluntly. Hinata avoided his gaze and spoke shakily, sorry before she could finish another person appeared and made himself known. Hinata-sama, are you alright? The newcomer asked with worry laced in his voice. Naruto turned his head and saw a man with brown hair that was spiked backwards. He had the same pale eyes that Hinata has. The Hyuga, Naruto mused. Hey Ko, you're here. Hinata said in surprise. Who did this to you? Was it him? Ko asked with a sneer while pointing an accusing finger at Naruto. Naruto merely looked at him with a blank face. And no, Ko, it was these three boys, Hinata replied weakly, but when she looked she saw that the three kids had already run off. DCH, well, no matter, as long as you're safe. We best be going now, Ko said strictly. Okay, Hinata muttered in a dejected voice. She wanted to thank the blonde-haired boy and try to talk with him more, but Ko wouldn't have it and grabbed her by the hand. Hinata was being led away by the hand, then she suddenly stopped walking. Huh? Something wrong, Hinata-sama? Ko asked with a raised brow. IID didn't ask him his name, she replied, but when she turned around he was already gone. She sighed sadly and allowed Ko to lead her away. Don't worry, you don't need to associate yourself with someone like that, Ko said with authority. Naruto left quickly after Ko arrived. He had nothing else to say to the Hyuga and he really didn't feel like dealing with Ko, who obviously didn't appreciate his company. Feeling a bit tried, he decided to go back to his apartment and get some extra rest. As he walked he thought about why he had helped the Hyuga girl. It wasn't any of his business and besides, people sometimes have to learn lessons the hard way, right? Like he did. But he knew something in him just told him move and intervene. He remembered Musashi always told him you can't do everything by yourself, relying on others when you need it is not a weakness. He sighed, he tried to remind himself this every day. He broke his thoughts when he realized he arrived at his home. Naruto walked up to the door of his apartment and noticed his neighbor Meso was there resting against the rail. He gave him a nod which the man returned. Naruto walked up to the man. Well? Naruto asked in a flat voice. The man let out a grunt then grinned quiet as a mouse. You got the heavy stuff, he replied. Naruto looked at the man, then pulled out a scroll from his side pocket. He unsealed 2 bottles of booze and handed them to Meso. The man grinned and took the bottles. Thanks, Naruto muttered. Meso chuckled and said no problem kid, looking after your place for a few hours is worth every sip. That was their system, Naruto would give Meso exported booze and Meso would make sure no one would tamper with his home. He was not so worried about people targeting his home because what he was, but more so random drunks and criminals breaking in. His apartment was located in a poor part of the village, break-ins were common here. Apparently this was the only apartment the Sandaime could provide him. It was sad really, but he didn't need pity. He entered his apartment and laid down on his bed. His apartment was furnished with the bare minimum, a bed, nightstand, table, and 2 chairs. He didn't mind, he barely spent any time here anyway, nor did he get visitors. He called it apartment fitting a shinobi. But he was lying to himself if didn't admit he dreamed about living in a home with a family his family. He laid on his side and looked at the only two pictures he owned. One was of his father and his pregnant mother. His uncle had given him this picture. The other was of course him and Musashi. Musashi had his hand on his head and wore a big smile on his face, as did he. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. He was thinking about Itachi and Shisui. Could he trust them? Somehow he felt he could, they were different. Those two intrigued him, he felt he needed to see them again, despite his own mental defenses telling him not to get too close. He had no intention of spilling his guts to them, but he wanted to see them again, learn more about them. He knew what he would do. Next day, Naruto hoped to cross the rooftops, he was searching for two particular Uchihas. He honestly didn't know where he could find Itachi or Shisui, they were hard people to find. He hadn't seen them before, so memorizing certain hangout spots like he did for others was not option. So he decided his best bet was to head over to the Uchiha district. You would think this would be his first place he would check. But it wasn't because he knew he couldn't just enter the compound and he knew asking about them could bring trouble. Seeing as he couldn't locate them, he decided to watch the compound from afar and hope they would appear soon. He sat on a tree branch adjacent the compound. He was still wearing his hood covering his face and no seemed to be paying him no mind. He sat in silence, watching various clan members, some shinobi, other civilians enter and leave the compound. He did notice how the Uchiha compound was located away from the other clan compounds. Before he could continue his thoughts, he felt a small group approaching. As they came into view, Naruto's eyes widened slightly when he saw who they were. The man walking in front had shoulder-length black hair and black eyes. He wore a blue kimono with the Uchiha symbol on the back and gray pants. He had similar features as Itachi. This man was Fugaku Uchiha, leader of the military police force and head of the Uchiha clan. He had a stern look on his face and walked with an aura of authority and arrogance. Standing to his left was Itachi, who had a stoic look on his face. On Fugaku's right was a boy about his own age, with raven hair and black eyes. He wore a blue Uchiha clan shirt and had a smile on his face. This was Sasuke Uchiha. Holding his hand was a raven-haired woman who looked to be in her early 20s. She had fair skin, long black hair, and black eyes. She wore a brown blouse with a purple skirt and blue shinobi sandals. She was smiling down at the boy, but her body seemed tense, as if she was worried about something. Naruto looked at them in curiosity. Could this be Itachi's family? Naruto asked himself. He looked at them closely and saw they all had too similar features to be just cousins or fellow clansmen. He knew who the clan head was, but he never knew his family. He then realized that Itachi was his son. He cursed himself for not knowing this beforehand. He always liked to be informed. He hated being left in the dark about potentially important information, it made him feel uneasy. He noticed they all had different expressions on their faces, he could feel the tension, and it was a bit awkward. But he still couldn't help but think they looked good together. Is this what a true family looks like? He shook that thought out of his head and suddenly noticed someone shunshin next to them. It was Shisui and he had a small smile on his face. I finally found you guys. He said in a mock greeting. The rest of the Uchihas seemed somewhat annoyed, but two of them were silently happy that his presence broke some of the awkwardness. Shisui suddenly looked across the street and locked eyes with Naruto and grinned. Naruto stared back at him with a blank look, but inside he was relieved he had finally found the Uchiha duo. Shisui walked over to Itachi and whispered in his ear, "Told you he would come find us," he said cheerfully. Itachi glanced in Naruto's direction and gave a nod. "Go on ahead, I'll catch up later," Itachi whispered to Shisui. Shisui nodded and appeared in front of Naruto. As Shisui left to speak with Naruto, Fugaku narrowed his eyes as he watched Shisui converse with a cloaked figure that he deduced was a child based on the person's height. Mikioto had a curious look on her face, while Sasuke looked confused. Sasuke decided to voice his confusion to his brother, who was the only one whose facial expression hadn't changed. "Nissan, who's Shisui talking with? I can't see his face." The rest of the family all turned to Itachi also wanting to know. They assumed that since he and Shisui were conversing that he would know. Itachi sighed, "Just a new friend," he said simply. They waited for Itachi to elaborate, but when they saw he wouldn't they decided not to pry. But Mikioto did notice the small smile on Itachi's face. Fugaku still had a suspicious look, but said nothing. With Naruto saw Shisui whisper to Itachi and he was curious, he wondered what he was saying. Suddenly Shisui disappeared from view. Naruto felt a slight breeze blow past him, then Shisui appeared in front of him. Body flicker. His speed is ridiculous. Naruto thought in awe. Shisui looked at Naruto joyfully and spoke, "So you came back, I knew you would squirt." Naruto looked at him neutrally, but his eyebrow slightly twitched at being called squirt. "Yes I have," he replied simply. They stood there in silence for a moment. Naruto felt a little awkward not knowing what to say. Shisui saw this and decided to take charge. "Well, come on, I want to see how skilled you are," he said with a smirk and walked away. Naruto just nodded and followed him. A few minutes later they arrived at the same training ground Naruto was training at the previous day. They stood across from each other on the open field, the grass flickering in the wind. Naruto was eager, despite knowing this was only a spar and that his opponent would hold back. He knew Shisui was strong, and he hadn't sparred with anyone stronger than him since Musashi. Naruto hid his eagerness with a stern face and took a defensive stance. He stood still and waited for Shisui to move first. Shisui observed Naruto's stance. Looks like he's waiting for me to make the first move," Shisui grinned. "Okay then, let's begin," he shouted enthusiastically. Shisui suddenly shot forward in a blink of an eye and appeared in front of Naruto with his fist cocked back. Naruto blocked the punch with his left arm and sent a right hook towards Shisui's midsection. Shisui leaned away from the punch and grabbed his arm and tossed Naruto across the field. Naruto landed in a handstand and pushed off the ground with a flip and charged Shisui. Shisui had his arms crossed and his body relaxed as he watched Naruto approach. As he approached he noticed Naruto's eyes morphed into single-tome Sharingan, causing him to grin. "Come on Naruto. If you manage to get a hit on me, I might show you my own technique," Shisui taunted, trying to motivate him. Naruto started to get annoyed at Shisui's speed. "No, I will land a hit, I'm better than this, if I can't do this, I'll never get stronger," Naruto thought with determination. As Naruto continued to trade blows with Shisui he never noticed at the arrival of Itachi, who was observing from a nearby tree. Shisui was mostly on the defensive, blocking and avoiding Naruto's blows, wanting to gauge Naruto's skill. He noticed that Naruto's strikes were getting quicker. "This kid is fierce," he thought cheerfully. Naruto jumped and sent a roundhouse kick towards Shisui. Shisui grabbed his leg, Naruto spun sent his other leg towards Shisui's head. Shisui blocked the kick with his right arm, he saw that Naruto was now open and kneed him in the stomach. Naruto hit ground holding his stomach in pain. Shisui grinned and said not bad squirt but still no dice. Naruto was still holding his stomach and slowly looked up at Shisui with a smirk. Shisui rose an eyebrow, but his face quickly turned into shock as he felt a kunai pierce him from behind. He looked behind him and saw another Naruto holding the kunai. A shadow clone. "At your age, that's some chakra you have there kid. Although I shouldn't be surprised," he thought knowingly. Naruto's smirk disappeared when he noticed Shisui's grin and Shisui disappear in a puff of smoke. "A shadow clone damn," Naruto inwardly cursed. "You're not the only one who can use the shadow clone jutsu," Shisui boasted amusingly. Suddenly 6 shurikens launched from the trees from both sides at Shisui. Shisui merely jumped back to avoid them, but Naruto took the opening to appear in front him and went through hand signs. "Mutant Tapa, wind release great breakthrough. No way, elemental manipulation already," Shisui exclaimed in shock. But before hit could hit Shisui disappeared in a body flicker. Naruto was panting heavily and groaned when he noticed his attack missed. Naruto slowly slid his left hand over the seal on his right arm. A small katana appeared in his right hand and he took a defensive position. Shisui was surprised at the action, but his focus quickly shifted to Naruto's left eye, which now developed a second tome. "This kid is incredible, a 2-tome Sharingan at his age, and his rate of growth is amazing," he mused. Itachi looked on also in surprise. "He's stronger than Sasuke," he thought, comparing his little brother who was about the same age. Before Naruto could charge forward, Shisui put his hand up. "That's enough, it's fine, I've seen enough," he said in a gentle tone. Naruto looked confused. "Huh? What about?" But Shisui cut him off. "Oh, don't worry about it, I was never going to let you hit me anyway. That way I could force you to push yourself to the limit." Naruto looked annoyed, he saw the reasoning, but couldn't help feel a little angry. "Jerk," he muttered. Shisui merely grinned. Itachi then jumped down from tree and appeared next to Shisui. Naruto looked a little surprised, while Shisui smiled. "Well, what do you think Itachi?" Shisui asked, knowing all along that he was watching. Itachi looked at Naruto and spoke. "That was very impressive Naruto, you are truly a genius." Naruto tried to suppress it but couldn't help but give a small smile. Being praised by Itachi Uchiha was no small feat after all. Itachi's face then turned serious however. "Don't let your talent get your head and become arrogant, you still have to train hard and have long way to go," Itachi said seriously. Naruto nodded, he knew this already. Then he suddenly dropped down to one knee, panting. His wounds and exhaustion catching up to him. Shisui laughed. "You should go home and rest, let me carry you home," he suggested. Naruto just waved him off. "I'm fine, I could get there myself," he replied and began to walk home with a slight limp. Prideful brat isn't he?" Shisui said with smirk. Itachi smiled softly. "Indeed he is, he's going to be interesting." As they watched Naruto's retreating form, they couldn't see the small smile on his face. The sun was high in the sky, its light illuminated the village. The stone faces of the village's beloved Hokages glowed in the sun. Just below the monument, the sun's fierce rays were particularly strong and reflected off the large insignia of the Land of Fire. The grander symbol stood proudly atop the village's administration building. Inside the building was an ordinary scene. An elder man with gray hair and goatee, his face was wrinkled. He was seated behind a large desk with a leaf village symbol displayed on its front. The man wore the standard red and white garbs of the Hokage. This man was Hiruzen Sarutobi, also known as the Third Fire Shadow. Hiruzen sat in his office with an annoyed look on his face. He had sent a team of Anbu to escort Naruto to his office. The problem was that was 30 minutes ago he knew the boy was good at avoiding his Anbu, but this was getting ridiculous. This was becoming a common occurrence. Whenever he tried to reach the boy, he would show up at his own leisure. He would try to be patient with the boy. He knew Naruto was dealing with many things at such a young age. He knew Naruto wasn't treated well as child. He would try to help him the best he could. Despite this, he asked himself many times if he could have done better. Naruto learned to take care of himself, defend himself, without his help. That made his heart ache. He had seen his fair share of young kids forced to grow up fast. He didn't want this for Naruto. He cast his gaze towards the picture of the fourth Hokage on the wall and begged a silent plea of forgiveness. He knew the boy's father would expect better of him, better of the village itself. He tried to get closer to the boy, but he was always so distant and would suppress his emotions. The fact that he could do so at such a young age was astonishing to him. He knew the boy was far ahead in maturity than his peers. The boy had his secrets, that much he could tell. He knew the boy suffered a great loss of someone he cared for. He saw it in his eyes, the look of someone who lost a loved one. He had seen this look too many times in his many years. He couldn't hide it from his veteran eyes. The question was who? As far as he knew, Naruto wasn't close to anyone. He thought that it could be his parents, but Naruto didn't know who they were or anything about them. His connection to them couldn't be that strong yet. Not enough to produce such eyes. So then who? He knew Naruto would not tell him. He had tried many times to get him to open up but failed. That worried him. Naruto was in contact with an unknown person. Someone he knew nothing about. He knew the boy was smart and wouldn't put himself in danger with unknowns. But for the safety of the village, he cursed himself for not knowing who it was. He wouldn't go as far as to bring the boy into T&I, he couldn't bring himself to that to him. What he did know was that the boy was safe and he would trust him for now. He hoped that whoever this person was at least brought joy to boy's heart, even if it was only for a little while. He deserved it more than anyone else. The sound of steel clanging stretched across the forest. In a secluded area just outside of the village, two figures stood adjacent each other. One panting lightly, the other sporting an amused smile across his face. The pair of blue eyes glared daggers at his opponent, who seemed to only smile wider. Naruto, maybe you should sharpen those kunai, eh? Not scratch at all. The blonde Uchiha let out a growl and quickly released 3 shurikens into the air. His opponent mimicked him and released his own set of shuriken. Clang, clang, clang. The projectiles flew through the air and met in the middle, cancelling each other out. Naruto sighed and looked at the triumphant face of his opponent, who was none other than Uchiha Shisui. Naruto was avoiding Shisui's constant request to train him for the remainder of the week. It was not that he was against it per se, but he wanted to avoid any attempts to get him to open up by Shisui or Itachi. Shisui found Naruto training alone in the forest. How he managed to sneak outside of the village undetected he didn't know. Shisui was getting impatient and trying to crack Naruto, so he decided to take a different approach. When he spotted Naruto, he decided to simply attack him. The blonde was shocked and annoyed, but it didn't matter, it was training, he couldn't refuse now, right? Hey Naruto, hold on a minute, come here, I want to ask you something, Shisui yelled out. Naruto stood still studying Shisui for a moment before reluctantly walking up to him. What is it? Naruto asked. Shisui's face became slightly more serious. Your elemental affinity is wind, right? Naruto nodded. Have you checked to see what your second affinity is? Shisui asked. Naruto raised an eyebrow but shook his head. No, I was only focused on developing my wind affinity. Shisui nodded his head slowly and scratched his chin. I see. Well, in that case I'm going to teach you fire-style nature manipulation. Naruto blinked and was about to say something, but Shisui continued. You see, wind is an extremely rare affinity in the Land of Fire and even rarer for an Uchiha to have. I'm surprised that you can already channel wind chakra, even if it's just the basics. Wind is one of the hardest elements to control. Anyways, as you already know, the Uchiha specialize in fire-style nature manipulation. So it should come easy to you, Shisui proclaimed. Naruto contemplated this, he did think he would develop a fire affinity originally. He remembered how surprised he was when the chakra paper he received from Musashi split in half when he channeled chakra into it. Shisui didn't wait for Naruto's response and started to explain fire manipulation. Now the first step is to gather chakra in your stomach at a steady pace. Once you gather a sufficient amount, you then change the chakra nature. Naruto became engrossed in Shisui's explanation that he seemed to forget his anger for Shisui's uninvited arrival. Envision the chakra turning into flames. You then heat the chakra, raising its temperature as high as you can. You will start to feel a slightly burning tingling sensation in your stomach. That's when you exhale the chakra through your lungs. Naruto listened intently, making sure not miss any word Shisui spoke. Shisui noticed Naruto's intense focus and inwardly praised him for being a good listener. The look in his eye told him that he understood everything he was saying. The air in your lungs fuels the flames, allowing you to exhale a stream of fire for the jutsu. This is the basis for any fire-style ninjutsu. From there the shape and power in which the fire is released depends on the particular jutsu. Okay Naruto, I want you to try to gathering chakra into your lungs, then change its chakra nature, Shisui instructed. Naruto nodded and closed his eyes in concentration. His hands were interlocked in a tiger seal. He started to feel the built-up chakra pulse in stomach. Good, now I want you to hold that chakra in for a minute so you can get used to the feel of it. Naruto did as he was instructed and held the chakra in. He winced a little when he felt a burning sensation in his stomach. Shisui noticed his expression and spoke, "You're probably feeling a slight burn in your stomach right about now. It happens to those who are new to using fire nature chakra, that's why I told you to take a minute to get used to it first. Don't worry, it will fade shortly." Naruto nodded and after a minute he opened his eyes. "I don't feel the burn anymore," Naruto said. "Good, you could stop channeling your chakra now," Shisui said. Naruto cut the flow of chakra and sighed as he felt his muscles relax. "Now I'm going to show you one of the clan's most used signature jutsus. The Kaiten no Jutsu, Fire-style Fireball Jutsu. This jutsu was not only created by our clan, but also considered a rite of passage to become a true Uchiha," Shisui explained. Whatever," Naruto replied irately at the last thing Shisui said. Shisui noticed his tone but ignored it. "Okay, first gather the chakra in your stomach like before, then change its nature. Then go through these hand signs, watch closely." Shisui quickly went through a set of hand signs ending with a tiger seal. Kaiten no Jutsu, Fire-style Fireball Jutsu. Shisui breathed out a large fireball. The ball of flame scorched the earth and continued into the forest. Naruto watched in amazement as the fireball exploded, destroying a large group of trees. "As you can see, the more chakra you put into the jutsu, the more destructive it becomes," Shisui explained. "Alright, I want you to try it. Do you need me to show the hand seals again?" asked Shisui. "No, I got it," Naruto replied. Naruto gathered chakra into his stomach, he then quickly went through hand seals Shisui showed him. Kaiten no Jutsu. Naruto breathed out a stream of fire, but it was insufficient. He tried again and got the same result. He tried once more, this time it was slightly larger but still not efficient. "I don't understand. I did the seals correctly. What am I doing wrong?" Naruto grumbled out in frustration. Shisui looked amused at the frustrated look Naruto gave him. Let's see, try it again." Naruto did so with basically the same result. Shisui had a thoughtful look on his face, then he smirked. "I think I know what your problem is," proclaimed Shisui. Naruto tilted his head. "What?" "You're losing your concentration in your nature transformation." Naruto quickly turned around, that wasn't Shisui's voice, it was Itachi. Shisui said in surprise. Itachi was wearing standard Anbu Black Ops attire, which consisted of a grey combat vest, black pants, and steel arm guards. Itachi looked at Naruto and Shisui with a frown on his face. Naruto noticed the frown on Itachi's face, and he had good idea why he was upset, but he paid no mind to that. He was more interested in Itachi's explanation. Though he did raise an eyebrow at his attire, but he couldn't say he was very surprised that Itachi was in the Anbu given what he knew of his strength. "Itachi, I thought you were going to be away on a mission for at least a week," questioned Shisui. "The mission was reassigned because I had other priorities," Itachi replied. Shisui gave him a questioning look, but said nothing. Itachi narrowed his eyes. "The more important question is, why are you outside the village, Naruto?" Itachi asked in a emotionless tone. Naruto closed his eyes and turned head. "I was just training in private," Naruto replied simply. But as much as he tried to hide it, Itachi could tell he was intimidated by the look he was giving him. "Is that so?" Itachi asked in a low voice. This time Naruto did flinch, which made him internally smirk and Shisui grin. "Haha, Naruto's scared of Itachi." Shisui laughed out. "DCH, who said I'm scared?" Naruto retorted. Itachi then looked towards Shisui, "And why didn't you bring him back?" Shisui rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "Well, I was eventually, you see, Naruto here was begging me to spar with him," he replied happily, while pulling Naruto into a headlock and ruffling his hair. Naruto scoffed and forcefully removed himself from Shisui's grasp. "DCH, begged. You came out of nowhere and attacked me." Itachi gave Shisui a deadpan look. Shisui chuckled. "Well, never mind that, Itachi, what are you doing here?" Itachi sighed and looked at Naruto. "The Hokage wants to see you and has sent some Anbu out to find you," he said seriously. "Huh? What does the Hokage want with me?" Naruto asked in an irritated tone. I'm not certain, but it's best not to keep the Hokage waiting, Itachi replied. Naruto let out a small growl. Hang on. You were going to tell me what I was doing wrong. Naruto said defiantly. Oh, is that begging I hear now? Shisui teased while raising his hand to his ear. Itachi just stared at Naruto for a few moments before sighing. The problem lies when you're changing the chakra nature to fire. Just before you release the jutsu, you are subconsciously channeling some wind chakra instead of fire. The way you release wind chakra through your lungs is very similar to fire nature chakra. Naruto had a thoughtful look on his face. Itachi continued, it's the result of you being accustomed to using wind nature chakra. You changed a small portion of the chakra into wind, resulting in an imbalance. Causing the jutsu to lose power, Naruto said, finishing Itachi's explanation. You got it. Actually, it's a surprise you were able to release any flame at all. Shisui pointed out. Itachi was thinking the same. Right, I need to concentrate harder, Naruto muttered to himself and closed his eyes. Itachi was going to retort, but Shisui put a hand on his shoulder. Hang on, let him do this, he needs this, he's stubborn like that, Shisui advised. Itachi sighed, then nodded. Naruto continued to try to complete the jutsu, while Itachi and Shisui watched on. Damn, learning a second element is harder than I thought, Naruto thought in frustration. He's getting frustrated. Most members of the clan can't even channel fire chakra at this age, let alone yet use this jutsu, Itachi thought dejectedly. But Naruto had other ideas. To him, he needed to prove to himself that he was strong. He wasn't arrogant, he just knew he could do this, he could feel it. He closed his eyes once again in concentration. I promised uncle I would be strong, he thought. Suddenly an image of Musashi entered his mind. Itachi saw that Naruto was still struggling. Naruto, perhaps you should. Naruto suddenly snapped his eyes open, his Sharingan coming to life. Haten Gakaku no Jutsu. He released a ball of fire. This time it was successful. A fireball only slightly smaller than the one Shisui released earlier soared into the forest, scorching the earth with intense heat. Naruto watched his jutsu soar into the forest. His red eyes glaring at it, daring it not to live up to his expectations. He watched as the fireball impacted, destroying several trees in an inferno. He sighed, a small smirk appearing on his face. Shisui whistled. How much chakra did the squirt put in that? Impressive, Itachi thought. Hokage's office. Hiruzen sat at his desk, getting more annoyed by the second. He heard a knock on the door. Come in, he commanded. Finally, after all this waiting. He thought, relieved. The door slowly opened, and in came an elderly man. The elderly man wore a black robe and a white shirt underneath, his right arm was tucked inside his robe. White bandages were wrapped around his head, covering his right eye. Hiruzen inwardly cursed, this was not who he was hoping for. He had the worst luck. He knew whatever Danzo Shimura wanted would just add to his list of growing problems. The man was persistent, like a virus. Danzo entered the room slowly, his cane tapping the wooden floor as he made his way into the room. He closed the door, then faced Hiruzen. He said nothing and just gave him a calculating look. Hiruzen sighed in annoyance. What is it that you want this time, Danzo? Danzo's face shifted from emotionless to a slightly angered expression, his lone eye glaring at Hiruzen. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki, tell me, do you know where he is? Danzo asked. Hiruzen let out a grunt. Listen, Danzo, do you know of the boy's activities? Danzo pressed on. Hiruzen gave him a stern look. The status of the boy is none of your concern, Danzo. And you should stay out of it and let me worry about it. Danzo took that as a no. He thought Hiruzen was a fool. How uniform the Hokage was truly laughable. You are letting an important asset to the village run free. The boy is getting stronger on his own every day. Uncontrolled strength. I don't think I need to tell you how dangerous that is, do I? Hiruzen narrowed his eyes. He knew Naruto had to be training, but he didn't know the boy's progress. Could Danzo know? The boy was mysterious in everything he did, but he supposed if someone did know it would be man first rate when came to knowing everything that goes in the village. The boy will be joining the academy. Eventually he will graduate and join our shinobi forces, therefore he will be monitored. Hiruzen replied. Danzo in fact did know of Naruto's potential. In fact, he knew that Naruto was the true golden egg of Konoha. An Uchiha who has awakened the Sharingan and possessed the Kyuubi, the strongest of the tailed beast. Yes, Danzo is well aware of Naruto's heritage and his potential. But how did Danzo know such a thing? Well, Danzo was more than just a frail old man. He is a man who feasts on the shadows of uncertainty of others. The czar of the self-proclaimed roots of the tree that is Konoha. In order to lead in the dark, he needed to know what others didn't. It infuriated him to know that village would waste such talent. He was the only one who could sculpt the boy to be the perfect loyal weapon. After all, that was what Jinchuriki were made for. As it stands, the boy would get stronger and a dark horse would rise, leaving pompous fools to ponder how they couldn't have seen it. One that was unrestrained and that had ideas that were contradictory to his ideal Konoha. Someone who in the future could have the power, both physical and even politically, to hinder his visions. There was no way he could turn a blind eye to that. And the Hokage in his eyes, Hiruzen was too weak-hearted and foolish to lead this village to its full potential. Ah yes, the academy. Well, if that's the case, then you should begin his shinobi career under my tutelage, for he Danzo was interrupted by a knock on the door. Come in, Hiruzen said in somewhat relieved tone. The door slowly opened and in came Naruto. He was wearing dark blue shinobi pants, a black shirt covered by a black cloak. He stepped forward, his face covered by the hood of his cloak. Naruto's eyes roamed to corner of the room and spotted Danzo. Naruto narrowed his eyes, he recognized this man as Danzo Shimura. His uncle had told him stories about Danzo. He told him about his rivalry with the Hokage. He knew that Danzo was a warhawk who believed that the village could only thrive through him. Musashi had warned him to stay away from this man. Naruto eyed him carefully, he couldn't help but get a bad vibe from the man's presence. Hiruzen looked at Naruto with a sigh of relief. He was finally here. He no longer had to hear more of Danzo's absurd rants. You wanted to see me, Hokage-sama? Naruto asked. Hiruzen spoke. Yes, Naruto, but I ask that you please remove your hood so we may have a proper conversation. As you wish, Hokage-sama, Naruto said in an almost mocking manner. Naruto pulled down his hood, revealing his spiky blonde hair with two bangs framing his face. He had deep blue eyes and 3 thin whisker-like marks on each cheek. At the age of 7, Naruto was built quite well and slightly tall for his age. Hiruzen couldn't believe how much Naruto looked like Minato at his age. Hiruzen gave Danzo a stern look. You may leave now, Danzo, our conversation is over. Danzo looked at Naruto with an emotionless look, which was matched by Naruto's own emotionless gaze. Danzo then shifted his attention towards Hiruzen and let out a short grunt before walking out the door. That fool Sarutobi is making a big mistake, I can't allow that boy to roam free, Danzo thought. Little did Sarutobi or Naruto know, Danzo had already taken many measures, some extreme, to get his hands on Naruto. But Sarutobi putting Naruto into the academy, it will make it more difficult for him to get to the boy. But he wouldn't allow something like that to deter him. Once Danzo left the room, Sarutobi looked back at Naruto. Seeing Naruto right in front of him brought back memories of his successor. Minato was taken away from this world way too early. He couldn't help but feel the village would have been better off if he had taken Minato's place as a sacrifice instead. He was sure the Yondaime would have done a better job as Hokage than he. Minato was the most renowned and influential shinobi in the elemental nation during his time. He was sure he still would be if he were alive today. If only he couldn't think like that. The past was the past. He would do his best to make sure the man's legacy would follow the right path and benefit the village. He just wished he could tell the boy who his parents were. It pained him to know he was suffering, but he knew it was the right decision. Naruto, my boy, I was looking for you for a while now, Hiruzen spoke in an irritated voice. Really, Hokage-sama? Perhaps the Anbu are getting rusty, Naruto replied. Hiruzen slightly glared at Naruto, was he mocking him? Naruto caught the Hokage's glare and slightly smirked. Hiruzen sighed, he would have to be patient with Naruto. He knew Naruto has been through a lot, but the boy rarely showed it. Naruto was an enigma to him, and he hated when he didn't know what the boy was thinking. Well, I hoped I didn't catch you at a bad time, did I? Hiruzen said. Not at all, Hokage-sama, Naruto replied with an emotionless voice. I see, well then let's get to the reason why I have called you here, Hiruzen said. Naruto had a good idea what the Hokage wanted, but let him continue. Naruto, the academy has already started a new semester last week, and you will be joining at this time. Hiruzen said. Hiruzen watched Naruto closely for a reaction, but found none. You were supposed to join last year, but you insisted you could learn by yourself. I'm afraid I can't postpone it any longer, my boy, Hiruzen said sternly. It was true Naruto didn't join last year's academy class because he knew the academy couldn't teach him anything new, but mainly because he was too emotionally distraught to deal with the other students. This won't be a problem, will it? You do want to become a Proudleaf shinobi, don't you? Hiruzen asked with a raised brow. A Proudleaf shinobi, huh? Naruto thought. He pondered what being a Proudleaf shinobi truly meant. What persona did the Hokage consider to be that of a true leaf shinobi? Was it a shinobi who followed all orders of their superiors without question? What about those who question authority and look beyond the illusions of what is considered right for the better of the village? Thinking such things wouldn't benefit him now. Of course, Hokage-sama, Naruto replied. Hiruzen sighed in relief. Well, my boy, this is the only way. I'm sure you'll adjust just fine, you might even make some new friends. Naruto sighed, he knew this was unavoidable. Very well, Hokage-sama, Naruto replied. Hiruzen noticed the still present emotionless look on Naruto's face and frowned. How can someone so young keep his emotions hidden? It reminded him of Itachi, who was the same at his age. Comparing Itachi to Naruto was a bit of stretch in his mind. Naruto is nothing like Itachi, right? Hiruzen asked himself as if trying to convince himself. Alright, my boy, be at the academy tomorrow at 6, Hiruzen said. Naruto nodded and left. Once Naruto left the room, Hiruzen walked over to the window and looked over his village. The sun shined brightly over the village, illuminating it, but Hiruzen knew the future of the village might not be as bright. Naruto wasn't the only problem he had to deal with, the Uchiha clan was becoming more rebellious by the day. Peace talks were going nowhere. Danzo was pestering him to pressure the Uchiha and force them to submit to the will of the village. He knew Danzo too well to think that he wouldn't take advantage of the political turmoil. He would have to watch Danzo carefully. But Naruto left the Hokage's office and was now leaping on rooftops, making his way to his apartment. Thinking back to his conversation with the Hokage, he could tell he was disappointed with his failed attempt to get him to open up. The Hokage knew practically nothing about him, and it would stay that way for now at least. Even though he didn't show it, he respected the Hokage to a degree. To be more precise, he respected the god of shinobi. He respected the man who survived through 3 wars and was student of the legendary Senju brothers. The man whose gaze could make even veteran shinobi flinch. Looking at him now, it was sad really. He was but a mere shell of his former self. He was not the same Hokage who would lead his people and not be swayed by pompous fools on the council. The man has lost his fire. He actually used to be a lot closer to the Hokage before he met Musashi. But now he couldn't deny his anger towards the Hokage for not being honest with him. He understood the Hokage's reason for not telling him of his family, but it made him angry that the man didn't trust him. He didn't have to release his heritage to the entire village, just him. Did he think he wanted to know just to gain some respect or a sense of superiority? Did he think he was not competent enough to understand the consequences if that information would get out? What the Hokage didn't understand was that not knowing who brought you into this world and if they cared for you was like missing a part of your identity. Especially for those who are not easily accepted and have no one left. And those who have no identity become lost in this world. He didn't need to know to gain recognition, no, he needed to know who he was for himself so he could find peace. His uncle Musashi understood this and he was grateful for that. The Hokage kept him in the dark so he would return the favor. Was he being childish? He didn't think so. After all, he knew one of a shinobi's greatest weapon was deception. Some things were best left in the dark. When Musashi was alive, he had advised him not to inform the Hokage about his presence because he could not be trusted. He agreed, he could have caved in and informed the council and they could have tried to keep Musashi, his family, away from him in fear that they might be corrupting their Jinchuriki. His mind drifted to what the next day would bring. He knew he was going to need patience to get through the academy. He would just have to endure it to become an official shinobi. It was just a mere obstacle in the path of his goal. Next day, Naruto trekked his way through the village towards the academy. He walked in a slow pace, he was in no rush and just wanted to enjoy the warm summer day. He wondered how 2 instructors would treat him once they recognized who he was. He doubted they would feel comfortable being near him. But in all honesty, it didn't really matter. After a few minutes of walking, he finally reached the academy. He made his way inside the building and found the room number that he was written down on the piece of paper the Hokage had given him. Naruto opened the door and quickly found everyone's eyes on him. He ignored the class for the moment and laid his eyes on the oldest person in the room, who was clearly the Chunin instructor. The man had brown hair tied in a ponytail and dark eyes. He had a distinguishing scar across the bridge of his nose. He wore a standard Konoha vest. Naruto walked up to the man and handed him the note the Hokage had given him. Iruka eyed Naruto curiously and silently wondered who he was since his face was covered by his hood. Iruka took the note and silently read to himself. His widened when he read Naruto's name, he looked up at Naruto. The Hokage is assigning him to me? He thought with a frown. He decided to cast those thoughts aside for now and put up a professional demeanor. Okay, well then, class, it seems we have a new student, Iruka announced. All the students' ears perked up at this. Iruka turned towards Naruto and spoke. Can you please remove your hood and introduce yourself to the class? He requested. Naruto sighed and reached up and removed his hood. The reaction instantaneously, whispering broke out amongst the class and curious looks were being sent his way. Most of the girls had blushes on their face, finding the blonde to be cute. Naruto turned towards the class and spoke. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Hinata was seated in the middle of the room and had a large blush on her face. It's him from the park, she thought. She was surprised he was joining their class but also delighted. Iruka waited for Naruto to continue, thinking he wanted to say more, but Naruto remained silent with an impassive look on his face. Seeing this, Iruka decided to move this along. He coughed into his hand to get Naruto's attention. Naruto, you can get acquainted with your peers later, for now go take a seat so we can begin, Iruka said. Naruto nodded and scanned over the room looking for a seat. Some of the girls were trying to discreetly get his attention, motioning to empty seats next to them, though it came out more direct. Naruto shrugged and made his way towards the closet available seat, which was next to Shikamaru and Choji. Choji noticed Naruto's approach and he was a little nervous for some reason. He whispered to Shikamaru. Hey Shikamaru, that new guy is coming over here. Do you think he's nice guy? Choji asked, slightly worried about Naruto's stoic demeanor. Shikamaru had his eyes closed and his head laid on his desk. He opened one of his eyes and looked at his best friend lazily. "I don't know, Choji, most blondes are so troublesome," he replied while glancing at Ino. Naruto walked over and took the seat next to Shikamaru. He gave both Choji and Shikamaru a nod as a greeting. Shikamaru gave a nod in return and Choji muttered a small hello. Sakura and Ino were looking at him intently with small blushes on their faces. They saw that he sat next to Shikamaru. "I wouldn't mind if he sat next to me." Ino and Sakura both whispered at the same time. They looked at each other and glared. "What did you say, Ino pig?" "Nothing, I like Sasuke. And besides, there's no way a cute boy like that will ever like a girl with such a huge forehead." Ino yelled. "Ah, so you admit you think he's cute?" Sakura yelled, pointing an accusing finger at Ino. Ino blushed and stuttered a bit. "L like you don't," she countered while looking at Naruto. Sakura blushed. I like Sasuke, and plus I could get any guy to fall for me easily." Sakura yelled. They were going to continue, but a glare from Iruka shut them up. "Alright, onto today's lesson. We're going to learn about the Shodai Hokage," Iruka announced. As Iruka lectured, the room began to quiet down, but Naruto still saw that there were a few people who still glanced at him. Shikamaru appeared to have fallen asleep, but Naruto noticed that he would occasionally open his eyes and observe him from the corner of his eye, but he just ignored it. Sasuke would occasionally give him curious looks. Kiba looked at him slightly annoyed, most likely jealous of the looks the girls gave him. Shino appeared stoic and you couldn't tell what he was thinking. Iruka continued his lecture, giving a rundown of the accomplishments of the 4 Hokages. Naruto was already well educated in the village's history, and his academics were impressive. Therefore he found Iruka's lectures uninteresting and useless. Naruto sighed, he didn't have a choice, he would have to put up it. 30 minutes of more lecture, and it was finally lunch time. Iruka ushered the students to the outside courtyard. Most of them sat in groups at the outside tables. Naruto, though, decided that he preferred the silence and made his towards a tree in the shade. Ino had asked him if he wanted to sit with them, but he declined, much to her displeasure. "DCH, does he think he's too good to sit with us?" Kiba yelled, flailing his arms around. "Huh, troublesome. Just let it go, Kiba," Shikamaru said, although he too wondered why Naruto wanted to sit alone. Hinata looked at Naruto sadly, she wanted him join them, but she was way too shy to ask him. Naruto sat in silence enjoying his self-made meal. He closed his eyes in contempt. He heard Ino and her friends chatting away. He had to admit part of did wonder what other kids his age talked about. He never had any true interaction with others his age. Musashi had tried to get him to make friends with others his age, but he always dodged around it. Was he afraid they would reject him? Possibly, but in truth it was mainly because he thought they wouldn't understand someone like him. He sighed and contemplated taking Ino's offer, but he was way too comfortable sitting here in the shade. Suddenly an idea came to him. He crossed his fingers and made an unnoticed shadow clone. He decided to send his clone to go and see what he could find out about the others. Naruto's clone approached the table, getting the attention of the others. "Ah, so you came back," Kiba blurted out. Naruto looked at him for a moment. I decided to take you up on that offer," Naruto said, now looking at Ino. Ino blushed a little at his gaze, but beamed at him happily. Sit here next to me, Naruto-kun," she said, taking his arm and sitting him down. Naruto raised an eyebrow, but let her take him to the seat. "Why don't we introduce ourselves to Naruto?" Ino said cheerfully. "Troublesome," Shikamaru muttered. Ino glared at him. "Fine, I guess I'll go first. My name is Shikamaru Nara," he said lazily. "I'm Munch, Choji, Munch, Akimichi," the large boy said. "Boy, I'm Kiba Inyazuka, and I'm the best here." Naruto glanced at the Inyazuka and whined at his loud voice. Naruto heard a small voice speak up to his right. I'm Hinata Hyuga," Hinata introduced with a stutter, a large blush on her cheeks. Naruto merely nodded, already knowing who she was. "Shino Aburam," Shino said stoically. "Aburam," Naruto figured as much given his strange attire. "And I'm Ino Yamanka." "Nice to meet you," Ino said cheerfully. Naruto nodded. He supposed he should say his name again, just to be polite. "Naruto Uzumaki." "Naruto, huh? I haven't seen you before, do you hang out at the park?" Kiba asked. "Park?" Naruto thought, then shook his head. Then where'd you go for fun?" Kiba asked. Naruto shifted slightly, uncomfortably. He didn't know how to answer that question, or rather didn't want to answer. Luckily he was saved by Ino. "Kiba, stop pestering Naruto," Ino shouted. "What, I just wanted to know where he hangs out," Kiba retorted, and the two began to argue. "Troublesome," Shikamaru muttered. Naruto tuned out their bickering and looked around the table. "You are all part of major clans." It was a statement, not a question. Kiba and Ino said, stopping their bickering, and stared at Naruto along with the others. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. "Yay, that's right, how did you know that?" Choji muttered. Naruto didn't answer and thought, and most likely soon to be clan heirs interesting. Ino suddenly remembered something. Wait, where's Sakura? She's usually here already. Naruto ignored thinking about the Sakura in favor of wondering where a certain raven-haired boy he saw the other day with Itachi was. He thought he would be here. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden shout from Choji. "And Naruto, if you're here, then who's that?" he said, pointing at a tree. Everyone looked to where Choji was pointing and saw another Naruto sitting by the tree eating lunch. A few of them gasped and looked at Naruto. "And Naruto, is that you?" Ino asked. Naruto's clone sighed, so they noticed the original me, he thought. Naruto looked at their question looks and merely shrugged. A sweat dropped at his nonchalant response. Iba growled and was about to shout but was interrupted by a new arrival. Everyone heard footsteps and turned around and looked surprised. The boy with black hair and black eyes walked up to the table. He wore a blue high-collared shirt and white shorts. "Sasuke-kun," Ino squealed. Sasuke looked around at everyone at the table. He then looked between the two Narutos. Naruto's clone stared back at him blankly, while the real Naruto merely rested against the tree with his eyes closed. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. "This is no ordinary clone jutsu, they're solid clones," he said, looking at the Naruto in front of him. What do you mean, Sasuke?" asked Ino. Sasuke smirked and took out a kunai from his pocket. Naruto's clone narrowed his eyes. "This kid can use an advanced clone jutsu already, he must be strong," Sasuke thought. "So this must be the clone," Sasuke said. He then threw the kunai at the clone. The kunai pierced the clone through the chest, causing it to explode in a puff of smoke. The kunai continued to fly through the air towards the real Naruto, who was almost perfectly aligned with his former clone. It was an impressive throw for an academy student. The kunai looping slightly through the air to hit the target perfectly. The others gasped as they watched the kunai pierce Naruto's chest, who still had his eyes closed. "Naruto!" the rookies yelled. Sasuke froze. He didn't actually expect the kunai to hit, he thought Naruto would dodge or block. To everyone's surprise, Naruto disappeared in a cloud of smoke. Everyone was confused, that wasn't the real Naruto either. Sasuke's eyes widened. That was a clone too. Then where is? Sasuke suddenly felt cold steel on his neck. He slowly turned his head and looked into Naruto's cold blue eyes. He froze under the steely glare being sent his way. "He got behind me. How? I didn't sense him," Sasuke thought in shock. "Whoa, did you see him move?" asked Choji. "He got the drop on Sasuke," Kiba yelled. "He's faster than before," thought Hinata in amazement, remembering when Naruto helped her. Shikamaru narrowed his eyes. "This guy's good, there's definitely more to him than it seems troublesome," he thought. Shino's expression was hidden behind his coat, but his raised brow could be seen. Ino's mouth was agape, she didn't think anyone in the academy could get the drop on Sasuke. But no one was more shocked than Sasuke. He figured the blonde was skilled given his ability to make advanced clones, but not this good. And that fierce glare Naruto was giving him, he couldn't help but shiver. Naruto stared into Sasuke's eyes, he could see the shock and slight fear in them. Once he saw the kunai leave Sasuke's hand, he replaced himself with another clone and moved on instinct. Naruto removed the kunai from Sasuke's neck and calmed himself. Being alone most of his life made him rely more on his instincts and fast reflexes. Sasuke wasn't a real threat, he was just testing him. Sasuke felt Naruto remove the kunai and his body slightly relaxed. Sasuke turned his body fully and faced Naruto. Naruto's glare disappeared, replaced with a blank face. Sasuke and Naruto both stared at each other, not a sound was heard. Sasuke was starting to feel unnerved by the silence and Naruto's blank face and spoke up, "That was pretty good, you caught me off guard. You might even be good enough to become second best in the academy, after me of course," Sasuke said with a small smile. Naruto eyed the dark-haired boy curiously, there was definitely some cockiness in his tone, no doubt from his Uchiha pride, but that smile was genuine and held no distaste. Naruto couldn't help but give a small smile, this Uchiha was too innocent. "Is that so, Uchiha?" Naruto said. Sasuke smirked, "So you know I'm an Uchiha, huh, Uzumaki?" The name Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto observed him. "So this is the brother of Itachi," Naruto thought. He noticed that Sasuke definitely looked Itachi, but Itachi was totally different. They heard giggling and whispering to their left, they turned their heads and saw a group of civilian female students. "Did you see that? He was so cool. Look, Sasuke's talking to him. And he's smiling." Naruto shook his head. Sasuke inwardly smirked, thinking he could perhaps dump some of his fangirls onto Naruto, although there was also a part of him that was put off with the idea of Naruto stealing his spotlight. It was true that he did find his fangirls annoying, but he did enjoy recognition, not that he would ever admit it. "Sasuke-kun." Sasuke smirked, suddenly disappeared. He recognized that voice anywhere. His biggest fangirl. She was like a bad cold that you couldn't shake off. "There you are, Sasuke, I was looking for you." "Sakura. Ha, I should have known you were out jazzing Sasuke around," yelled Ino angrily. Naruto looked at the newcomer. So this Sakura, he thought. The first thing he noticed was how abnormally pink her hair was. He wondered if that was her naturally color. He also noticed how loud she was. The look of annoyance on Sasuke's face told him that he didn't enjoy her presence at all. Naruto is here too. Sakura said. You missed how awesome Naruto was. Ino said. What are you talking about? Sasuke growled in annoyance, not wanting to be reminded again of Naruto showing him up. Naruto noticed some of the other students giving him odd stares, still remembering his little display. Suddenly all conversation was brought to a halt when a Chunin instructor ordered everyone back into class. The remainder of the school day consisted of more lectures from Iruka. Naruto was relieved when he heard the school bell, signaling the end of the school day. The students ran out of the building and were greeted by their parents and siblings, who came to pick them up. Naruto watched on stoically, but inside his heart ached. He didn't actually need to be walked home, but being greeted by waiting loved ones was an precious feeling. He could see it in the eyes of the other kids. He noticed some of the parents were looking at him with curious and surprised expressions. He guessed keeping mostly out of public for a few years caused some of the villagers to not recognize him. But there were still some who did recognize him if the glares were anything to go by. It didn't matter to him, these people's opinion held no ground. Naruto was surprised when he saw Itachi appear and approach Sasuke. He figured Sasuke must be closer to his brother than his parents, given that it was Itachi who had come to get him. Sasuke leaned by a fence with his hands in his pocket as he silently waited for his brother. He spotted Itachi and smiled. Nai-san. Hello Sasuke, how was school today? Itachi asked. Sasuke paused for a moment. It was alright, he replied. Itachi raised an eyebrow. He knew Sasuke had something on his mind, but he would wait for Sasuke to bring it up. Itachi looked over all the other students. He wished Sasuke would make a better effort in trying to make friends. He noticed his little brother had a hard time connecting with others. He didn't want father's superiority complex to rub off on his little brother. Itachi's eyes landed on Naruto and he gave a small smile. Naruto nodded back. Sasuke noticed gesture and was surprised. Nai-san, do you know him? Sasuke asked. He was confused, how could Itachi know Naruto? Itachi merely stared at Sasuke. Sasuke was beginning to think he wasn't going to answer, but then he spoke up. Sasuke, you should try to be friends with him, it would benefit you both. Itachi replied. Sasuke frowned. That didn't answer his question. Naruto managed to get the attention of even his brother. Just who was this blonde-haired kid? And why would Itachi want him to be friends with him? Why would I want to do that? Sasuke asked. Itachi smiled and poked Sasuke's forehead. That little brother, you will have figure out on your own. Sasuke huffed, he hated when his brother poked his forehead. And he hated when he said stuff like that. Why couldn't he just tell him? Come on Sasuke, let's go, you don't want to keep mother waiting, do you? Itachi said. Sasuke gave Naruto one more glance before following Itachi home. Itachi knew Naruto was mature for his age, but like Sasuke, he was also not very social with others. Itachi didn't want Naruto to grow fast like he did. He wanted Naruto to be like the other students, but he knew that was unlikely. He didn't know how Naruto felt about Sasuke being an Uchiha, but he hoped that they would discover similarities between each other and form a bond. Sasuke needed bonds like this to keep from following in their father's footsteps. And Naruto needed to learn to trust others or he would lose himself. As they walked, Sasuke was deep in his own thoughts as well. He couldn't stop thinking about being bested by the blonde enigma. Was he stronger than Naruto or was he just lying to himself? He wanted to be as strong as his brother. He wanted his father to recognize his strength too. He was an Uchiha, he had to be the best, father always taught him that. Itachi and Sasuke were greeted by their fellow clansmen as they entered the compound. Sasuke, go get ready for dinner, we're eating earlier today, said Itachi. Sasuke nodded and left to get ready. A few minutes later the Uchiha family were all at the table eating dinner. They ate in silence, enjoying the quietness. Mikoto though noticed that Sasuke was more quiet than usually and had a thoughtful look on his face. Surprisingly, it was Fugaku who spoke up, he apparently also noticed Sasuke's mood. Sasuke, what's the matter? He asked in a gruff voice. Sasuke was quiet for a moment. Mikoto looked at her son worriedly before he finally spoke. Do-san, Kachi-an, Ai-san, I want to up my training, I need to get stronger. Mikoto looked surprised, while Itachi seemed to expect Sasuke to say that. Oh, why the sudden determination to get stronger? Asked Fugaku curiously. Sasuke knew his parents could tell when he was lying, so he hesitantly told them the truth. The new student in school, he's skilled. He can already use advanced clone jutsu and I don't want to fall behind. Itachi instantly knew who Sasuke was talking about and guessed Sasuke must have been egging Naruto on, making him reveal some of his skills. Mikoto was surprised and wondered who this new student was that could cause Sasuke to be like this. Fugaku was confused, a new student that could possibly be stronger than his son. Now Sasuke was no Itachi, but he was still an Uchiha, therefore expected to be top of the class. Who could this person be? Tell me son, what is the name of this new student? Fugaku asked, irritated. Naruto Uzumaki. Makoto's eyes widen in shock, she recognized him as Kushina's son. So the Hokage put him in the academy, she thought. Fugaku's eyes also widen in shock. He thought. Fugaku suddenly stood up from his seat and started to walk out of the room. I just remembered an important matter I must attend to, carry on without me, Fugaku said without looking back. This caused both Itachi and Makoto to narrow their eyes, while Sasuke just looked confused. What could he be up to, they both thought. Deep inside the village in the furthest corner stood one of the largest clan compounds in the village. It was located far away from the other clans' compounds. If one didn't know any better, they would have thought that this clan must not be of high significance. But this clan was none other than the mighty Uchiha clan. It was odd to find one of the strongest clans in such a secluded area. But this didn't seem to cross the minds of the majority of civilians and shinobi of Konoha. To them, the Uchiha were as strong as ever and are the pride and joy of the village. But they didn't notice the Anbu Black Ops members that were hidden in the outer corner of the compound. Something was definitely going on. Inside the Uchiha compound lied the Naka Shrine, one of the most conspicuous and sacred locations within the Uchiha district. Shisui slowly made his way towards the shrine. The moon had just become visible, signaling the transition to night. The streets were quieter than usual with only a few civilians out. It usually was like this when this time came around. Shisui walked through the torii, signaling the transition from profane to sacred. He walked into the shrine and into the main hall. He made his way to the 7th tatami mat from the far right and lifted the mat. A secret entrance. A large stone with a Sharingan eye wrapped in a sealing formula guarded the entrance. Shisui went through a set of hand signs that only a number of selected members of the clan knew in order to move the stone. Walking down the steeps, it led to a dark room, lit only by 2 small torches at the far end of the room. This was the secret meeting place of the Uchiha clan. At the end of the room was a stone tablet that held the secrets of the clan. Fugaku Uchiha was seated on a mat and had a serious look on his face. Seated to his left was Makoto Uchiha, her face was impassive. To his left were the elders of the clan. Seated before him were his clansmen, awaiting their clan head to speak. Fugaku looked over his clansmen, there were 50 of them present at the moment. All chosen personally by Fugaku himself to be here. These were strongest members of the clan and some of the most loyal as well. Certain information discussed here was to be passed along to the other members on a need-to-know basis. Shisui walked into the room and received a nod from Fugaku, which he returned before joining his clansmen. Fugaku noticed that Itachi wasn't among them, and he scowled. He looked at his wife. "Makoto, do you know where Itachi is?" he asked gruffly. "I believe he is on another mission for the Anbu," she replied. Fugaku grunted, "Didn't you tell him that we were having an important meeting today?" Makoto sighed. "Of course I did," she said in an annoyed tone. Fugaku closed his eyes in contemplation. Itachi was beginning to act more strangely since joining the Anbu. He had been pleased when Itachi moved through the ranks so quickly. Graduating at the age of 7, Chunin by age 10, and headed straight into the Anbu half a year later. It was nothing sort of incredible even by Uchiha standards. He was undoubtedly the pride of the Uchiha clan. Itachi's promotion to the rank of Anbu captain at age 13 opened a big door for the clan. Of course, having one of their own reach such a prestigious rank at such a young age brought honor to the clan. But Fugaku saw an even bigger opportunity that he couldn't pass up. As Anbu captain, Itachi would have more access to more sensitive information. He hoped that Itachi would be able to spy on the Hokage, given his rank. Fugaku and the rest of the clan noticed that Itachi starting acting stranger since his promotion. He was more reserved and secretive than normal. Fugaku didn't know what was going through his head, but for the sake of the clan he couldn't let anything jeopardize their ambition. So he had given the task of monitoring his eldest son to Shisui, one of his most loyal clansmen. Fugaku cleared his throat and spoke, "Everyone is here, good." Yashiro sealed the room. Yashiro nodded and walked over to the wall. He then went through some hand signs, then placed his palm on the wall. The seals on the walls glowed, then disappeared again. Outside the compound, one of the Anbu members flinched as a small winged beetle landed on his finger. "They have gone under," he said to his 2 comrades. The other 2 Anbu sighed and nodded. Fugaku closed his eyes in contemplation before opening them again. "Ikumi, do you have the recount on our numbers?" Fugaku asked. Ikumi Uchiha was a veteran member of the police force and one of Fugaku's most trusted assistants. Ikumi nodded and spoke up. "We have 363 members and about a third of them are shinobi. The rest are non-combative." Fugaku frowned. The number of combative shinobi the clan has been producing was dwindling over the years. The overall number of members the clan has was minuscule compared to years ago. Makoto sighed, "It's to be expected, we are no longer in the Warring States era. During this time period, all the shinobi clans were at their peak. The Uchiha along with the Senju stood at the top as the strongest clans. The era was defined by bloodshed due to the constant fighting. Towards the end of the era, the aftermath was clearly visible. Clans lost significant power, some even completely wiped out. It was impossible for any clan to come out unscathed, the Uchiha were no exception. Fugaku growled and slammed his fist on the arm of his chair. All the more reason why we need to restore the clan to its glory. Yes, we must increase our numbers. I have a suggestion, said one of the elders. All eyes turned towards the elder Uchiha who spoke. Fugaku nodded, signaling him to continue. The elder stood up from his seat and looked at Yakumi. Yakumi, do you have the status of the next generation? Yakumi raised an eyebrow, but nonetheless pulled out a scroll from his shirt pocket. He unraveled the scroll and looked it over. Well, let's see here, the amount of genin we have are adequate, but the number we have in and entering the academy are low. Makoto sighed, she too noticed the lack of other kids in the clan that were in the academy. She wondered if that was part of the reason why Sasuke had trouble opening up at the academy. We will have to have more civilian families enroll their children for shinobi training, the elder said. Murmurs of agreement were heard around the room, most the clan thought it needed to be done. Another elder stood up and spoke. It's a good decision, but we must go farther. We must bring back arranged marriages back into the clan. It's simple, we must pair the strongest males and females of the clan, so they have a better chance of producing children who can awaken the Sharingan. Makoto scowled, she hated when the elders would try to take control of everyone's lives. She knew the practice of arranged marriages all too well. She was forced into an arranged marriage with Fugaku when she became a chunin. She was undoubtedly the strongest female in the clan and Fugaku the strongest male. The former clan head of the Uchiha had no heirs, given that his sons died in battle. So he had decided that Fugaku would be his successor. The clan decided that Makoto was to marry Fugaku so they could produce a strong heir. It was unavoidable when all the elders agreed. Well, I think it's a good idea, said Anabi. Everyone must have noticed that the number of members who have been able to awaken the Sharingan have been dropping slightly. This will ensure that the clan will continue to have strong wielders of the Kekkei Genkai, he reasoned. Aimi Uchiha started getting more angry as she saw more people around agree with the elders blindly. Aimi was a chunin-level kunoichi and talented in her own right. Some members looked conflicted, while the majority agreed with whatever their superiors thought was best. Whether it was unconditional loyalty or fear, no one dared to speak out. Also, any relations with someone not of the clan must be deemed worthy and approved by us, said a third elder. Aimi couldn't take it anymore and she was about to stand to her feet but felt a hand grasp her shoulder. She looked to her left and noticed it was her friend Daiki. Daiki was a Jonin-level shinobi and once was a former member of the Uchiha police force. He dropped out to become a Jonin sensei. Daiki placed his hand on her shoulder and shook his head. He knew where Aimi was coming from, but he knew speaking out no would only get her into trouble. They were both loyal members of the clan, but that didn't mean they agreed with every decision the clan made. Aimi looked at her friend, then looked towards the front of the room at Makoto, who discreetly told her to stand down. She sighed dejectedly but complied. Fugaku looked around the room then nodded towards the elders. So be it. It's the will of the clan, but any arrangements will be decided later, as we have more urgent priorities, Fugaku said. At today's council meeting we were denied the expansion of the police force. They said there isn't a need for expansion, Fugaku said surprisingly calmly. The Uchiha clan was in charge of the police force, but the higher-ups proclaimed a limit on how many members may be in the organization. The Uchihas in the room scowled at this. Makoto sighed, she also thought the village had no right to control how many members were in the organization that was under the clan's domain. Fugaku held his hand up, silencing everyone in the room. I think some of you have already come to realize that the police force is not as important as we thought, Fugaku said, surprising some of his clansmen. While others had looks of understanding, already drawing the same conclusion as their clan head. Asking for the expansion of the police force was more of a test to see how the council would react, and it clearly showed that they aren't acknowledging our prominence. But you see, we need much more than just the police force. Fugaku said. What do you mean? Asked one Uchiha. Fugaku looked at him and answered. Most of us believed that the police force was created by the Uchiha, but that's not the case. It was actually created by the Nidaime Hokage, Tabarama Senju. Fugaku saw the surprised looks of some of his clansmen and continued, yes, it's true, the Nidaime deceived us to believe that the police force was a sign of trust and honor to our clan, but it was all lies. Is it true? Was the police force created by the Nidaime? Aimi whispered out loud. Yes, it is in fact true, said a voice to her right. It was Daishin Uchiha. Daishin was one of the oldest members of the clan, at 60 years old. He has proven that his years of experience more than make up for his old age. He chose to continue his shinobi career for reasons only known to him. Yes, Aimi, it's true. Not many here know it because it isn't located in the Uchiha archive, but rather hidden deep within the village's archives. Not that anyone here would bother to look. Daishin thought to himself. But the Senju aren't even around anymore, we are on top. Another Uchiha yelled out. Fugaku shook his head, yes, the Senju might not be here anymore, but their influence still stands within the Senju-influenced government of the village. The Sandium Hokage and the two elders, Hamura and Kaharu, were under the tutelage of the Senju. The police force isn't enough, it's more of a replacement to keep us out of the village's government. We no longer have the same influence in the village's affairs. We enforce the law of the village, yet has anyone noticed that we have no say in what those laws are? Fugaku is correct, we deserve better representation in the council. As a founding clan we deserve at least 2 seats on the village council, said one of the Uchiha elders. There were shouts of agreement heard throughout the room. It's just as our ancestor, Madara, had feared the Uchiha are losing power, Fugaku growled out. Many looked surprised hearing the legendary Uchiha's name as they contemplated their clan head's words. It's true, he predicted this would happen. Sadly we didn't realize it till now, we must act before it's too late, said an elder. We won't allow them to control us. Do they honestly believe we don't know about the Anbu who watch us every night? Their blunt disrespect of the Uchiha is disgusting. Fugaku yelled out in anger. Shisui didn't like where this was going. He looked around and noticed that the others were clinging to every word their clan head spoke. They felt empowered. Although there were a few who didn't seem to agree like Aimi, but stayed quiet. He looked at Makoto who had an unreadable expression, but he could tell that she was deep in thought. We must protect the Uchiha not matter what the cost. But for now we need more information on what the Hokage and the elders are planning. Itachi's position as Anbu captain is key into infiltrating the village, said Fugaku. Fugaku's clansmen looked pleased, trusting that their most prodigious member would be able to complete the task for the clan. That's all for now, you're all dismissed, except for you Shisui, I need a word with you, said Fugaku. Shisui nodded, having a good idea what Fugaku wanted to talk about. The rest of the clan members began to leave the shrine. Makoto stood up and untied tighter hair that was held in a ponytail and let it fall freely. What seemed like a simple gesture to most was actually a signal to those recognized it. Let's go, Aimi whispered to Daishin and discreetly followed Makoto out. Everyone left the room leaving only Shisui and Fugaku alone. Shisui quickly gave a small bow in a show of respect to his clan head. Fugaku-san, is this about Itachi? Asked Shisui. Fugaku closed his eyes and was silent for a moment. Shisui calmly waited for him to respond. Fugaku opened his eyes and spoke, no, this isn't about Itachi. Shisui raised an eyebrow, this wasn't about Itachi. Tell me, what do you know of Naruto Uzumaki? Okay class, today we're having a written test on the village's history, Iruka announced. Troublesome. Make that 2 test now. Troublesome. Iruka's eyebrow twitched, make that 3 test. Suddenly an unidentified object thrown by an unidentified individual hit Shikamaru on the back of the head. Shikamaru looked back and was greeted by laughs and annoyed looks. Damn, it could been any one of those troublesome bastards. He thought. He rubbed his bruised head and sighed, trouble. Don't you dare say it again, Shikamaru Ino yelled. Hey, that was my lunch someone threw. Choji yelled through tears. Naruto watched on in slight amusement. It's been 4 weeks since Naruto joined the academy and he could honestly say it was just like he expected it to be. Long lectures and aggravating juvenile ninja trainees. Iruka had begun to accept him after observing him and finding that Naruto wasn't the troublemaker he thought he would be. Naruto also learned more about his classmates. He found out that Shikamaru Nara was an extremely lazy person, but that was not shocking, given that he was a Nara. But underneath that laziness was a genius, a lazy genius, but nonetheless a genius that he could respect. He noted that Choji Akimichi was a nice but timid kid who was best friends with Shikamaru. He had an insane love of food and becomes hostile when you mention his weight. Hinata Hyuga was a shy girl with confidence issues, despite being part of the noble Hyuga clan. Shino Aburam was a calm and solitary person. He never said much, but when he did, it was usually to point out the logical conclusions that others failed to notice or ignored. Kiba Inuzuka was brash and loud. He had a tendency to prove that he was the best and was always attempting to show him up. Ino Yamanka was short-tempered, cheerful, and bossy. She concentrated more on her appearance than her shinobi training. She constantly had boys on her mind and had a deeply infatuated with Sasuke. Apparently him as well, if all her direct attempts to get his attention were any hint. Sakura Haruno shared similar traits with Ino, but to a larger degree. She had an even bigger temper and deeper infatuation with Sasuke. She too didn't take her shinobi career seriously and concentrated more on her looks. And lastly there was Sasuke Uchiha. Sasuke wasn't the most social person, but then again he himself wasn't either. Sasuke was talented for his age, but he noticed that Sasuke didn't like living in the shadow of his older brother. Itachi had told him that Sasuke was determined to be the top of the class in order to gain their father's recognition. Naruto didn't know what it felt like to live under someone's shadow. When he trained with Musashi he never really compared his strength to anyone else. Even though he could be the top of the class, he decided that he would ease up and let Sasuke take the position. It was not for Sasuke's sake, he did it for Itachi, who he knew also wished that their father would take more of an interest in Sasuke. Also because he really didn't care for the attention. Luckily Iruka's threat of multiple tests never came true due to the bell ringing signaling the end of class. Don't think this means you guys are off the hook, we'll take the test tomorrow. Iruka yelled, getting several groans of annoyance in response. Naruto was about to walk out of the room but stopped when Ino appeared before him. "Hello Naruto, I wanted to wish you a happy birthday," said cheerfully. Naruto gave no outward reaction at first. He had totally forgotten that today was his birthday. Growing up alone made him not place any importance on things such as birthdays because it required others to celebrate it with. "Thanks Ino," he said. "Hey, I didn't know it was Naruto's birthday," yelled Sakura. The other rookies were thinking the same. Naruto was now 8 years old, he was actually a few months older than the others. "Ah, that's too bad, because that means you didn't get him anything," Ino pointed out to her rival. "That's not fair Ino, how did you know it was his birthday anyway?" questioned Sakura. "How did she find out my birthday? I never told anyone in class," wondered Naruto. "I have my ways," Ino said with a wink. "Actually she just peeked at his academy registration form that was on Iruka's desk," Shikamaru said lazily. Ino blushed and glared at Shikamaru while everyone else sweat dropped. "Dear Naruto, I got you some chocolates and these flowers from my family's flower shop." Naruto felt a bit awkward as he wasn't used to receiving gifts. Naruto sighed, but nonetheless accepted the gifts and nodded his head in thanks. Hinata looked on sadly as Ino gave Naruto a birthday gift, they seemed like very affectionate gifts. If she had known, she would have gotten him something. Then maybe he would have noticed me. She thought shyly. "Happy birthday Naruto," Choji said and patted his back. Do you think I can have some of those chocolates?" asked Choji with some drool hanging down the corner of his mouth as he eyed the chocolates. "Shut up Choji, they're for Naruto," Ino yelled. "Dear Naruto, smell the flowers, they're fresh and I picked them out just for you," Ino said while holding them out to him. Damn, she's persistent, Naruto thought. He was in somewhat good mood today, so he decided to be polite and smelled them. "They smell good," he said, causing Ino to squeal in delight. "Ah, Naruto smelling flowers, that's not very manly of you is it?" Kiba jabbed. Naruto turned and looked at him and said, "I see, you prefer to smell the behinds of others, yes?" Everyone laughed at Kiba, causing him to go red in anger and embarrassment. He hated when people would make fun of his clan. It was even funnier because Naruto said it with a straight face. Does the Inuzuka clan really do that? Choji wondered out loud. "I believe he was just making a joke," Shino said. "But given the Inuzuka's close ties with their dogs, it may be logical that they do share the same tendencies," he said stoically. Choji gasped and put his hands behind his butt shielding it while moving away from Kiba. Seeing this everyone laughed harder at Kiba's expense. Kiba fumed, "I don't do that," he yelled at Choji. All the other rookies wished him a happy birthday except Sasuke who wasn't there at the moment. "Hey Naruto, why don't you spend your birthday with us? We could throw you a party, it will be fun," Ino said cheerfully. "A party? But that will take a lot of work to put together, how troublesome," Shikamaru said. "Will there be free food?" Choji asked. Before the others could say anything, Naruto stopped them. "No, parties aren't really my thing, but thanks anyway," he said and walked out of the classroom. The others watched him walk out of the room and sighed. "Huh, that's strange. Who doesn't like parties?" Choji asked in bewilderment. "What's up with him?" Kiba shouted, not liking Naruto's attitude. Sakura, Hinata and Ino looked saddened while Shino looked emotionless, thinking there was a logical explanation as to why Naruto didn't accept. Shikamaru sighed, "Naruto's always been strange like that, it's hard to figure him out." Naruto walked out of the classroom knowing he left a few of his classmates disappointed, but it didn't really concern him. He was beginning to accept his classmates somewhat, but that didn't mean he was comfortable enough to let them in yet. Outside, Sasuke was talking to his brother. Itachi saw Naruto and motioned him to come over with a wave of his 2 fingers. Naruto walked over, a small smile appeared on his face. He had become a lot closer to Itachi despite his initial apprehensiveness. He knew that Itachi was unlike any other Uchiha he met before. He was reserved, calculative, and modest. Coming to his aid along with Shisui during his fight with the police force showed that he held no animosity towards him. When he learned about his Uchiha lineage, he showed interest in learning more about the blonde, and vice versa. Naruto deducted that Itachi wasn't a threat to him, but Naruto was too calculative to accept anyone without knowing their motives. He eventually dismissed any ill intentions and deuced it was out curiosity and genuine concern for his well-being. He didn't spend much time with Itachi due to Itachi being in the Anbu and his duties to the clan. But Itachi would check on him from time to time. "Hello Naruto, how was your day in the academy today?" Itachi asked. Naruto shrugged just like any other day, nothing new. He replied. Itachi nodded. "I've heard that it's your birthday today," said Itachi with a small smile. Naruto nodded his head, "It is." "I see, happy birthday then," Itachi said, then looked over at Sasuke who looked to be annoyed at being ignored. Itachi gave him a small nudge. Sasuke looked at his brother and saw him motion his head towards Naruto. HMP, happy birthday, Sasuke muttered. Itachi smiled and ruffled his hair much to Sasuke's annoyance. He knew that his little brother didn't like when Itachi would talk with Naruto because he felt like he was being overlooked. Naruto saw Sasuke's annoyance and smirked. "What did you say, Sasuke? I couldn't hear you." Sasuke grew more annoyed. "Shut up, Naruto," Sasuke said. Naruto usually didn't bother annoying others, but he couldn't resist this time. Itachi watched in amusement as the two young Uchihas interacted. These two were the strongest among the next generation of the clan. But he couldn't help but worry about the future of the clan. The way the clan was operating now, he didn't want Sasuke to grow up into that. He looked at his little brother. He was still just a kid and was ignorant of the darkness of the clan. He would make sure to keep it that way. He then looked at Naruto. Naruto, he was a child who was already exposed to the darkness and pains of the shinobi world. What would be his future with the Uchiha? He knew Naruto didn't trust the clan, the only ties he held with the Uchiha were through Shisui and himself. But it was best it stayed that way for now at least. "Itachi, have you seen Shisui?" asked Naruto curiously. "Actually, that's the reason I called you over. Shisui just returned from a mission and wanted me tell you that he wants you meet him at the training ground." Naruto nodded, thrilled with the idea of Shisui teaching him something new. He gave the Uchiha brothers a polite goodbye and quickly left. Why is Shisui training him? He's not Uchiha. Sasuke asked his brother. Itachi sighed. He wasn't going to tell Sasuke that Naruto was in fact an Uchiha because word would spread to the clan and the rest of the village. "Sasuke, don't think like that. Remember our late cousin Obito, who died during Third Shinobi World War, was trained by the Ottoman. If someone not of the clan can train an Uchiha, then why not the other way around?" Sasuke thought over his brother's words. I guess you're right," he said, but didn't sound completely convinced. "Nai-san, what about me? Can you train me today?" Sasuke asked with hope. Itachi smiled sadly at his brother and poked his forehead. "Ow. I'm sorry, Sasuke, but I have to prepare for a mission," Itachi said sadly. Sasuke looked downhearted, but Itachi continued. "However, I heard father telling mother that he was going to show you the fireball jutsu today," said Itachi truthfully. "Really, Nai-san? Then I'm going to tell father I'm ready to learn," said Sasuke before running off. Itachi smiled happily at his brother's excitement. Father is finally paying attention to Sasuke, he thought. But it was truly bittersweet. Naruto hoped to cross the rooftops and soon made to the training ground came into view. He was looking forward to meeting up with Shisui. He hadn't seen him all week due to him being busy with clan duties. Naruto arrived at the training ground and saw Shisui facing the other way, sitting on a stump. "Shisui?" Naruto called out. Shisui didn't reply, nor did he move. "Oi, Shisui, are we going to train today?" Naruto asked. Silence. Naruto was starting to get annoyed, didn't he hear him? Just when Naruto was going to call him again, Shisui suddenly stood up but still didn't face him. "Naruto, you," Shisui said quietly. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "What?" he asked. Shisui was acting strangely. Shisui turned around and started walking up to him slowly. His face was emotionless, still saying nothing. "Shisui? What's wrong with you?" Naruto asked worriedly. "Is he mad at me?" he wondered. Shisui approached closer and closer and raised his right hand, his finger pointing out. Naruto took a subconscious step back when Shisui was mere inches from him. "What the hell is going on?" thought Naruto. Shisui brought his finger up towards Naruto's face. Nearly touching his eye, his extended finger quickly turned into an open palm. Smack. Shisui smacked Naruto on the back of his head. "Ow. Why the hell did you do that for?" Naruto yelled angrily. Shisui pointed an accusing finger at Naruto. "You told Itachi about that?" accused Shisui comically. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "That? Yes, that. Oh, you mean that, so?" Naruto said nonchalantly. "So? What do you mean so? What do you expect? Something that pathetic. How could I not tell Itachi about it?" Naruto said with a smirk. Shisui had finally found the guts to ask a girl out. Apparently when he approached her he got nervous and panicked, so he retorted to the only pickup line he could remember. It went something like, "Hey, did you sit in a pile of sugar? 'Cause you have a pretty sweet ass." It was obvious that it didn't end well for him. Naruto recalled that he even tried to make up for his blunder by muttering something about showing her his Jinjutsu. Yep, total fail. The best part was that Naruto happened to be there at the right time to catch it all. Shisui was too flustered to know he was there. Naruto of course had to inform Itachi about the epic failure he witnessed. Itachi was never one to bother with such things, but when it came to his best friend, there was no way he could let him live it down. To add to Shisui's embarrassment, somehow a few others of the clan found about it. Shisui's rep took a hit to say the least. "Damn you, Naruto. Just you wait, I'll get you back for this." Shisui yelled while shaking his fist. Naruto just smiled at him. Shisui sighed and let a small smile form on his face as well. He couldn't stay mad at him. If there was anyone that truly broke through his defensive, it was Shisui. His friendship with Shisui became even stronger than his friendship with Itachi. While Itachi would mostly look out for him at distance, Shisui was like an annoying brother who he couldn't shake off. He told himself many times that his family was dead and that he didn't need anyone else. He still remembered Shisui words that truly changed him. Flashback, sweat poured down Naruto's face as he delivered another kick to a training log. His hands were bruised and bloody. He had been training for hours now, and his body was starting to shut down. Memories of Musashi had resurfaced and wouldn't go away, no matter how hard he tried to bury the pain. The only way he knew how to escape the pain was to train himself till his body gave. With each kick and punch his anger grew. Why did he leave me alone, he thought. He smashed his fist into the wood, cracking it. That was it, his body couldn't take any more. He fell forward, his face ready to smash into the ground. Suddenly he felt an arm wrap around his chest, holding him up. His head immediately jerked up and was surprised to see Shisui there. Him again, he thought angrily. He wanted to be alone, he didn't need anyone's help, they didn't understand his pain. You should stop now unless you want to end up in the hospital, Shisui said seriously. Naruto glared at him, why? Huh? Why do you care so much? Naruto yelled. Shisui's eyes widened slightly, he wasn't expecting Naruto to ask him that, but he kept his composure. That's a good question, Shisui muttered while looking off into the distance. Naruto kept his glare. After a moment he looked back at Naruto, his face serious. Naruto, you are very important to the village. You are the legacy of two very renowned shinobi who are precious to Konoha. Naruto flinched slightly. Looks like I was right, he does know, Naruto thought. You have been chosen to hold an entity of unimaginable power within you, the same power that almost destroyed the village years ago. Along with this power you bear a heavy burden, one that you shouldn't have to bear alone. Despite your all talents, you should know that you can rely on your comrades. Shisui said truthfully. Naruto was silent as he thought over Shisui's words. He thought he was important to the village and wanted to help him. Does that mean he saw him as just an asset to the village that needed to be protected? Shisui saw Naruto's face and knew what he was thinking. But you should know that there's one more reason as to why I care so much, and it's the most important of them all. Shisui said softly. Naruto looked up at him quizzically. Shisui activated his Sharingan and poked Naruto's forehead. Naruto's own Sharingan activated subconsciously. It's because you and I are family and I always help my family. Shisui said with a smile. Naruto's eyes widened, he remembered Musashi's words, Naruto, you and I are family, and I always protect my family. Flashback end. Naruto smiled at the memory. Shisui and him were technically cousins, but Naruto viewed him more as an older brother, not that he ever told Shisui that. Anyways, I did call you here to train, but there has been a change in plans, said Shisui. We're not going to train. Why? It's been over a week since we'd last trained, Naruto complained. Shisui grinned, that's because, I just remembered that today's your birthday, you didn't think I would forget, did you? Naruto tilted his head. Shisui's eyebrow twitched as Naruto seemed to think over his rhetorical question. Anyway, we're going out to get a bite to eat, I'll treat you, Shisui said. Naruto normally didn't like going out much, but when it was with Shisui it was different. He enjoyed the company of the older Uchiha. Alright, Shisui grinned, let's go. Naruto and Shisui walked through the commercial district of the village. This was one of the most populous sectors of the village. Naruto looked around at the different shops. There were lots of options, some more expensive than others. Naruto looked at Shisui. He was walking ahead and seemed to already know where they were going. Hey Shisui, where are we going? Naruto asked curiously. Shisui stopped mid-stride and looked back at Naruto. He scratched the back of his head. Well, normally I would let you pick, but I have some place special where I want to take you. So come on, follow me, Shisui said. Naruto raised an eyebrow. He'd been around Shisui long enough to tell when he was nervous and he was defiantly acting a bit strange. But he decided not to comment and followed closely behind. They continued to walk for a few minutes and made their way out of commercial district. They were nearing the outskirts of the village. Naruto was confused, why did Shisui bring him here? There were no shops here, in fact the only place here was the… Naruto suddenly stopped and looked at Shisui with narrowed eyes. Shisui felt Naruto gaze on his back and sighed. He knew this was coming. Shisui, why are we going there? Naruto asked sternly. There wasn't much anger in his voice, more curiosity. Shisui looked at Naruto with a serious expression. Look Naruto, I know you're wondering why I took you here, but please just trust me, Shisui said. He then grinned, as for why I'm taking you there, it's a secret and don't worry, with me here there won't be any trouble, I promise, Shisui reassured him. Naruto stared Shisui for a few seconds before sighing. Fine, he mumbled. He still didn't feel too comfortable about going there, nor did he know why Shisui wanted to take him there, but he trusted Shisui enough. The two continued to walk down the path. The dirt path soon ended and gave way to much more elegant coal-colored stone-paved road. 2 columns of evenly spaced trass lined the path. Walking up the path, they found themselves standing in front of a large stone gate. A large banner hung across the entrance, the Uchiha crest etched into the cloth. Naruto stood still and just stared at the gate, a look of contemplation on his face. Shisui sensed Naruto's hesitation. He remembered that Naruto's last interaction with the clan wasn't so pleasant. He placed a hand on his shoulder reassuringly. Naruto nodded and the two entered the compound. Sasuke and Fugaku stood on a small dock facing a small lake. It was one of the few lakes in the village. Sasuke stood patiently and watched his father, but inside he was excited that his father was finally willing to teach him something. "Watch carefully," Sasuke Fugaku said and quickly went through hand signs. Fire-style fireball jutsu. Sasuke watched on in amazement as his father executed the jutsu perfectly. "This the key jutsu of our clan. Now I already showed you the hand signs, the next step is to build up your chakra and focus it to a point in your chest. Then force it into the throat and out the mouth," Fugaku instructed. "Now you try it." "Right," said Sasuke. "Father is actually teaching me the jutsu himself. He's finally giving me a chance to show that I matter too. I can't disappoint him, I can do it," thought Sasuke while going through hand signs. Fire-style fireball jutsu, but it was not meant to be, he was only able to exhale a small flicker of a flame. Fugaku watched on apathetically as the flame died down, along with Sasuke's hopes of pleasing him. Fugaku let out a disappointing sigh. "Why did I think you would be like Itachi? It's too soon, you're not ready yet." Sasuke looked down dejectedly. Fugaku turned and walked away, but before he could reach the end of the dock, he was interrupted by one of his men who appeared by his side. "Sir, Shisui has returned from his mission, but he seems to have brought a kid with him into the Uchiha district," he whispered to Fugaku. Fugaku nodded, of course he knew who the kid was. "Sir, should I summon him?" "There's no need for that, you're dismissed," Fugaku ordered. The man nodded and left, with Fugaku following suit. Sasuke remained with a saddened look on his face. He was too disappointed in himself to notice the short arrival of one of the men in his father's unit. The young Uchiha's disappointment was short-lived and turned into a new wave of determination. He would train hard to get his father's approval. "I'm going to learn this jutsu, no matter how long it takes," he vowed to himself. Naruto felt weird being inside Uchiha compound, he had seen it from the outside many times, but never actually went inside. He remembered being very curious to see where his clan lived when he was younger, but Musashi had forbidden. He always told him that Uchiha were bad news and to stay away from them. Taking a look around, he'd be lying if he said he wasn't impressed. It was easily the largest clan district in the village, which shouldn't be surprising given the clan's immense wealth and prestige. Shisui noticed Naruto's expression and smirked, "Pretty impressive, huh? Maybe I'll give you a full tour some other time." Naruto gave a short nod in response, still engrossed with his surroundings. He felt a strange sensation, it was as if he had been here before. But he knew for a fact that wasn't the case. He was brought out of thoughts when he noticed he was being watched. It wasn't long before they gained the attention of the other clan members. Naruto knew this was coming and dreaded it. He wasn't in the mood for a conflict today. Looking around he saw people pause and stare at the two of them, mainly him. Shisui, of course, noticed all the attention Naruto was getting and looked at him from the corner of his eye. Naruto's expression was neutral. If he felt uncomfortable he certainly didn't show it. Shisui wasn't surprised at this point, knowing Naruto long enough to know that he was good at hiding his emotions when he wanted to. Naruto saw looks of surprise and confusion. He didn't expect a clan like the Uchiha to be the most welcoming, especially to non-members in their territory. They of course had no knowledge of the fact that he too was an Uchiha. Expecting to be confronted by now, he was surprised that there was none. He looked at Shisui in bewilderment. Shisui gave small smiles and nods to people as they walked along. He didn't seem alarmed at all. But looking closer you could see a glint in his eye that had a dangerous tone in it. It was a warning. Under that friendly demeanor was a fierce Konoha shinobi. But more importantly, to them he was known for being one of the most talented and devoted members of the clan. The unspoken message was clear: back off, and they did just that. Naruto viewed this as a testament to Shisui's status in the clan. It was one of those times where he looked up to Shisui. His ability to seize respect was truly admirable. Not that he would ever tell him that. "Ah, here we are," Shisui said. Naruto observed the place, it was a small senbei shop. An elderly man and woman were seated in front of the store. "The senbei shop. Doesn't seem so special to me," he muttered, not seeing why this place was worth coming all the way here for. Shisui eyebrow twitched. "It's not just any senbei, they make the best senbei in Konoha. No, scratch that, in the entire nation," Shisui exclaimed. Naruto didn't seem too convinced. Shisui shook his head. "Anyways, more importantly, this place is special. Me and Itachi would come here all the time when we were younger," he said reminiscently. "I see, so this place is kind of like a tradition here?" Naruto asked. "You can say that, this place has been serving the clan since as long as I can remember." Shisui and Naruto approached the store, getting the attention of two seated in front of the store. "Shisui, that you?" asked the woman. Chiusi gave a polite bow. "Hello Yuruchi, how have you been?" His answer was a whack to the back of the head by Yuruchi's wooden spoon. Yuruchi scowled. How come you and Itachi don't visit us anymore? The last time you were here was weeks ago. Yuruchi said. Now, cut him slack Yuruchi, I'm sure the two of them have been very busy with missions. The older man said. Shisui rubbed the back of his head and smiled sheepishly. Teaki is right, we have been pretty busy with our clan's duties, among other things. We mean no disrespect. Yuruchi scowled faded into a small smile. Alright, just make sure you visit more okay and tell Itachi he'll get his whack soon enough. Shisui chuckled and nodded. Who's this? Teaki asked, now noticing Naruto. Shisui smiled, this is Naruto, he's a friend of mine. Naruto, this is Teaki and his wife Yuruchi, they're the owners of the shop. Hello Naruto said and gave a polite bow, figuring he should since Shisui gave one. Well isn't he sweet, your parents must have taught you well, Yuruchi said cheerfully. Naruto said nothing and just stared blankly. Shisui decided to quickly change the subject. I was telling Naruto earlier that you guys make the best senbei. He's never tried any before, so I decided to take him here. Do guys have any fresh ones? Yuruchi chuckled, we just sold out our last batch, you'll have to wait for the next to come out of the oven. Yuruchi said. You boys can wait inside, come on and Teaki said. Shisui nodded and took his seat at the small table in the back of the store. Naruto shrugged, he didn't mind waiting and took a seat across from Shisui. So tell me, what do you think of the academy so far? Shisui asked. Naruto sighed, the academy is just what I expected it to be. They teach you how to access chakra, then basic ninjutsu and taijutsu. I'm not learning anything new, it gets really boring. Naruto grumbled. Haha, well you aren't exactly a regular academy student, cut your teachers some slack. And besides I'd rather you ease up on your skills in the academy, I don't want them to promote you too early. Said Shisui. Naruto shook his head, I doubt they would promote me early anyway, Naruto retorted. Why's that? You don't think you're good enough? Shisui jibed. It's because the village isn't at war anymore, so the Hokage won't feel the need to promote shinobi as quickly as they did in wartime. Still I feel like the academy standards have dropped since then. Naruto explained. Shisui looked at Naruto and shook his head. There you go thinking beyond your age again, but you shouldn't really compare generations. Don't forget a lot of lives were lost so we could reach this time of peace. Shisui said seriously. Naruto nodded. The bells on the door rang signaling that someone entered the store. It was a young female, she looked like she was in her late teens. She had dark brown hair that reached just past her shoulders. She wore a blue top and black short pants. She walked over to the counter and called out to Yuruchi and Teaki. The couple emerged from the kitchen and smiled at the girl. Naruto watched on as they began to converse. Looking at the girl, he sworn he'd seen her before, then it hit him. Hey Shisui, isn't that the girl you asked out before? He asked. Shisui's face became flustered when he saw the attractive girl walk into the store. Shut up, she might hear you, he whispered. He slumped down in his chair in a pathetic attempt to hide. It wasn't long before she spotted him. Shisui. You're here too. She said walking up to the table. Hey there Aimi. Wait, don't tell me you're following me are you? She asked with narrowed eyes. No of course not, I just came for the food honestly, just ask him. He said pointing at Naruto. Aimi looked over at Naruto curiously. The first thing she noticed was his blonde hair and blue eyes, which were rare traits in Konoha. Who's this little guy, isn't he cute she said with a smile while stroking his cheek. Naruto turned his head, his cheeks took a light red hue. But to his credit, his demeanor quickly turned back to normal. Shisui grinned. Was that a blush I saw? I'd never seen him blush before. Maybe Naruto has a thing for older women, this kid is going to be a ladies' man he gets older. Shisui thought amusingly. Wait, Aimi just gave a kid more attention than she's ever given me he thought dejectedly. My name is Naruto. She smiled, hello Naruto my name is Aimi. She then gained a thoughtful look on her face. Naruto she was sure she heard that name before somewhere but couldn't quite place it. Aimi, about before I was thinking maybe we could start over, Shisui said while rubbing the back of his head. Aimi sighed, seriously Shisui, you need to stop getting advice about women from those perverted books, Aimi chided. Naruto tuned out their conversation, his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about his certain visits he was going to make today. He had been putting it off for a while now, but today he felt was a good day to do so. Fine Shisui, I'll forgive you, but only because Yuna adores you, Aimi said. Shisui smiled, speaking of Yuna, are you here to buy treats for her? Asked Shisui. Aimi smiled at the mention of her sister's name. Yep, Yuna loves Teaki-san's treats. She was begging me to get her some. Yuna was Aimi's 4-year-old little sister. Their parents died fighting in the Third Shinobi World War. Aimi has been taking care of her ever since. Shisui noticed Naruto's silence, something wrong? He asked. Naruto sighed and stood up. I've got something to do, I'll see you later Shisui he said left the store. Aimi watched Naruto walk out and turned to Shisui. He seemed to be in a bad mood, is it because of me? Aimi asked, wondering if it was something she did. Shisui shook his head, no it wasn't you, he's just a little stressed out, I'm sure he'll be fine. He had an idea where Naruto was going, but decided not to voice it. Aimi nodded, then she realized something, wait, he said his name was Naruto, is his last name Uzumaki? Is he the one who holds the 9 tails? She asked. Shisui stared at her for a moment before slowly nodding his head, that's right. You don't have a problem with that, do you? He asked with slightly narrowed eyes. Of course not, I just thought I recognized him, but I wasn't sure that was him. Is there any reason why he was with you? She asked curiously. Shisui shrugged, he's a friend, he said simply, and body flickered away, leaving her confused. Naruto didn't think he would have the courage to stand here, he thought it would be too painful. But he needed to be here. Before him lay 2 tombstones side by side. The names Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki were carved into the stone. Hello to-san, Ka-san, he said quietly. Today's my birthday, you know. I've turned 8 years old today. I wish you guys were here to see it. Would you be proud of me? He wondered. Not being alone for one of his birthdays for the first time was a good feeling, but he couldn't help but feel like something was missing. He wondered what it would feel like to have his parents here with him, and Musashi, he wished he could have been buried here with his parents so he could visit him too. A tear slid down his cheek. He promised himself he wouldn't cry anymore. Suddenly he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned his head and saw Shisui smiling sadly at him. Shisui, I know it hurts, I know, he whispered. But you're not alone anymore. Naruto wiped his face and smiled. Thank you, Nai-san. Shisui was surprised when he was roughly pushed into an alleyway and slammed into the wall. He prepared to defend himself, but gulped when he saw who his attacker was. He started to sweat when he looked into the angry eyes of Makoto Uchiha. This was one Kanachi you defiantly didn't want to piss off. Whatever you think I didn't do it, I swear. Shisui cried out. Why was he always getting into trouble with women? Makoto glared at him. I've been hearing others in the clan talking about seeing you accompanying a young boy with blonde hair and blue eyes around the compound. I wonder who that could be. Makoto asked, the sarcasm evident in her voice. Shisui sighed, he knew sooner or later he would have to answer to Makoto. Nothing that happened in the clan escaped her. Look, it's not what you think. Oh? What am I thinking? You know it's not safe to bring him anywhere near the clan, especially now. Makoto said angrily. I know, this wasn't my idea, Shisui said seriously. Makoto eyebrow rose questionably. Then who? She asked, although she already had a pretty good idea who it was. Looks like I'll have to tell her everything from the start, he thought. After the last clan meeting, Fugaku asked to speak to me in private. Flashback, everyone left the room leaving only Shisui and Fugaku. Shisui quickly gave a small bow in a show of respect to his clan head. Fugaku-sama, is this about Itachi? Asked Shisui. Fugaku closed his eyes and was silent for a moment. Shisui calmly waited for him to respond. Fugaku opened his eyes and spoke, no, this isn't about Itachi. Shisui looked surprised, this wasn't about Itachi. Tell me, what do you know about Naruto Uzumaki? Shisui narrowed his eyes. So this is about Naruto, he thought. Naruto Uzumaki, he's the host of the 9 Tails, Shisui said simply. Right, but have you heard any news about him recently? Fugaku asked. Shisui shook his head, no, I hear he keeps to himself, I haven't seen him at all, Shisui replied smoothly. Fugaku became silent for a moment, making Shisui tensed, but he still managed to keep his composure. I've learned that the Hokage has enrolled him in the academy and that he has shown to be very skilled. Fugaku informed. Is that right? Well, it should come to no surprise considering who parents were, Shisui replied. Fugaku nodded. Yes, Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki were definitely 2 powerful shinobi. I have been watching their son for some time now, he's an interesting child. He has the potential to be a powerful shinobi, but more importantly, he poses a great power within him that can be very beneficial to the Uchiha. Shisui's blood ran cold as soon as those words left Fugaku's lips. Fugaku's gaze hardened. Shisui, you're one of the people I trust the most, so I'm going to be forthright with you. The direction we're heading can most likely only lead to war. As you know, the clan's strength has been dwindling, and I have to question if we have the strength and numbers to combat the village, Fugaku said truthfully. Shisui's eyes widened slightly in surprise. It was not his declaration of battle with the village that surprised him, rather his questioning of the Uchiha's strength. Fugaku was one of the most conceited members of the Uchiha. The man's entire philosophy was based on the superiority of the clan to the point that his better judgment caved to his pride. He guessed even the most prideful of people had to give into some form of reality at some point. And the tired look in his eyes and his solemn tone showed that this game of cloak and daggers the Uchiha were playing with village was wearing on him. He wasn't sure what to make of this. Perhaps there was hope that this could still end peacefully, no matter how bleak it seemed. The power of the Kyuubi, we all saw what it could do during the attack on the village. It's inconceivable, Fugaku said. Shisui mentally winced. He didn't need to be reminded of that horrible day. He saw firsthand the amount of destruction the Kyuubi could cause. Konoha was never the same after that. It was fairly obvious what Fugaku was suggesting. But this was madness. Fugaku-sama, such power is destructive and difficult to control, and if it were to backfire, it could cause more harm than good, Shisui reasoned. Fugaku nodded. I know, I'm well aware of the risk of collateral damage, but don't underestimate power of the Sharingan, the power to control the Kyuubi. The seal is keeping the beast at bay and protected against outside influences like the Sharingan. But if the boy starts accessing the power of the tailed beast, the seal weakness and the tailed beast becomes more susceptible to be controlled. There is the other possibility of Naruto learning to access the Kyuubi's chakra on his own and using it for our cause, but that is highly unlikely given the difficulty of controlling the chakra of tailed beast. Also, we don't have much time, Fugaku explained. So you're counting on the Sharingan's ability to control the Kyuubi? Shisui stated. Yes, the Sharingan, your Sharingan. Gone was the drained look in Fugaku's eyes, replaced with familiar stern eyes filled with ambition. Shisui, you possess the strongest eyes of the clan. With the visual prowess of your Mangekyo Sharingan, you can control the Kyuubi and with its power help the Uchiha regain what is rightfully theirs, he declared. He bit his lip, he was in a tight spot. He didn't agree with any of this. And he didn't want Naruto to be a part of this. It was just as he feared could happen if Naruto had gotten closer to the clan. On the other hand, he knew outright refusal would end badly. He wondered if he revealed Naruto's Uchiha lineage that he would reconsider using one of his own. No, he would be fooling himself if he believed that would change his mind. Fugaku at this point was willing to sacrifice his own. He still liked to believe that the Fugaku he knew was still there somewhere. A leader that had honor, conceded yes, but still one who valued the life of each member of the clan as if it were his own. And even felt pride in protecting the people and values of the village their clan had helped create. But the man before him was not said person. He was someone who led by hatred and bitterness. Someone who wanted to regain the honor that he felt his clan had been wrongfully stripped off. And perhaps he was right, their honor had been stripped by false accusations. But did the ends justify the mean? It was ironic really. Here they were plotting the very thing that they were accused of doing. He felt as if this made the whole thing less justifiable. Fugaku seemed to sense Shisui's hesitance, his eyes narrowed dangerously. Shisui, I need you for this mission, the clan needs you. Do you not trust in my leadership? If you feel you can't complete this mission, just say so, I will get someone else to do it, Fugaku said strictly. He needed to make sure he had someone who was fully committed to the mission. As much as he would have liked to have Shisui, he had other capable shinobi. Shisui's eyes widened, someone else. No, he couldn't trust anyone else with Naruto. They wouldn't be able to connect with Naruto, which meant they would try unfavorable methods to get him to comply. It had to be him. His bond with Naruto actually made him the perfect choice for this. His best option was to comply, that way he could at least watch over Naruto. He quickly bowed. Forgive me, Fugaku-sama, I merely want to consider all options so we can do what's best for the clan, Shisui explained. Fugaku observed Shisui for a moment before nodding. I see, that's good. Your devotion to the clan is strong. I have always trusted your judgment, now I'm asking you to trust mine. I've thought this through, Shisui. This will change the tide in our favor, Fugaku said confidently. Now I ask you, will you stand with me? Shisui felt a knot of dread in his stomach. He hated this. He wished he could have told him what he really felt about his plan, but he couldn't, not now at least. Shisui raised his head, his eyes meeting Fugaku's challenging gaze. I trust you, please allow me to complete this mission for the clan. Fugaku didn't smile, but he could tell he was pleased with his answer. You made the right choice, Shisui, you will do a great service to your clan. I'll do my best. Let me tell you the mission details. Ideally, I would have you use that jutsu, as its ability to control another is foolproof. However, it takes time to recuperate, time we don't have. Also, we're going to need it down the line for other matters, so I don't want you using it from now on. Unfortunately, that means you are going to need to be more hands-on with this. You must study the boy and learn the best way to befriend him and earn his trust. The goal is to get him to want to join the clan, but it must be by his own will. If we try to force him, the Hokage and the elders would immediately intervene for obvious reasons. I see, but don't you think they would try keep Naruto away from the clan anyway, whether it be by his own free will or not, given that he is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki? Shisui questioned. The last thing the village would want was to hand over their Jinchuriki over to the Uchiha. Fugaku nodded, yes they would, however the Uchiha have the right of self-govern and can accept any Konoha shinobi or citizen into the clan if they are willing. They have no say in clan affairs. That being said, it would foolish to believe that law alone would stop the elders, especially Danzo, from trying to keep Naruto out of our hands, explained Fugaku. So what do you think is stopping them from doing just that? Shisui questioned. Eventually nothing will, but all we need to do is sow the seeds of our vengeance within the boy and it won't matter if they keep him away. Also we can expect a slow reaction out of the Hokage. You see, I have been surveying Hiruzen's relationship with Naruto, and it turns out he has been very lax with him, giving him lots of leeway. His inability to bond with the boy and his self-guilt of being unable to save the fourth has made him negligent. And it seems the boy does not hold the Hokage and his authority in high regard. We can use that to our advantage. You want to use his hatred for the village's leadership to help him turn towards the clan and our goals, Shisui stated. Naruto is a child with raging emotions. Someone who lost it all that doesn't know where to turn, we must make the path clear to him. The Uchiha will become his family and he will help us obtain what is rightfully ours. Shisui's face stayed neutral, but mentally his mind was racing. How much did Fugaku know about Naruto? Where was he getting his information from? One thing was certain, it would do him well not to underestimate Fugaku. He had a daunting task ahead of him. But he had to stay strong not just for Naruto's sake, but for the clan and the entire village. Flashback end. And that's how it went down, Shisui said dejectedly. Makoto clenched her fist. Ever since Fugaku learned that the third had enrolled Naruto into the academy, he has been more on edge. Her fears of him setting his sights on Naruto coming true. His objective, the Nine Tails, was no surprise. The Sharingan's ability to control the Kyuubi was well known. It wouldn't be long before someone would attempt such a feat again. And Naruto, her heart sympathized for him. He couldn't catch a break. His burden once again tormenting him. She wished Kushina and Minato were still with them, she missed them dearly. Their son needed them the most right now. She wanted to be there for him. It's what Kushina would have wanted, it's what she wanted, but unfortunately she didn't have that luxury. Fate was cruel. The incident with the Kyuubi immediately brought on accusations of their clan's involvement, which in turn drove Fugaku to plot his coup. All her attention had to be given to situation on hand. But not this time. This was something she couldn't put off. Kushina was family to her, like a sister. The thought of Fugaku trying to manipulate Kushina's son made her blood boil. She wouldn't allow it. Shisui, sensing her anger, spoke up. Believe me, Makoto, I know how you feel. When Fugaku initially told me his plans, I was livid. I wanted to stop him then and there, but I had to be cautious, he explained. Makoto's eyes narrowed. Shisui, I won't let this happen. I won't either, but I want you to let me handle this. Please just hear me out first, he said pleadingly. Makoto sighed but nodded. When Fugaku revealed his plan to me, he said he was confiding with me because he trusted me. He needed someone he could trust, he stressed the importance of this. It was as if he feared there were those out to oppose him, Shisui explained. Oh, Fugaku knows there are those who oppose his coup, alright, and it makes him very cautious. But what Shisui doesn't know is that there are people he fears more than those who simply oppose his coup. People who wish to take his power for themselves, Makoto thought gravely. Right, so even though Fugaku has placed his trust in me, I believe he has a backup plan in the event I were to betray him. It's possible that he's confined plans with someone else so they can ensure the coup goes as planned even if he's incapacitated. In any case, I don't want to take any drastic measures until I gather more intel, Shisui explained calculatedly. Makoto thought over Shisui's reasoning and could see the logic behind it. She knew the importance of timing and the domino effect of their actions. She had been very cautious to mask her own movements. If Fugaku felt cornered, he would likely take drastic actions. That would be the last thing they needed. Looking at Shisui, she could see the genuineness of his concern for Naruto. It seemed somehow he was able to bond with Kushina's son. She remembered that he was very fond of her and also held great admiration for the fourth Hokage. Could that be what drove him to help Naruto? She could also see why Fugaku chose Shisui for this mission. He was one of the most talented members of the clan, but he also possessed another talent. He was good at reading people and understanding them. That made it easier for him to connect with them. Shisui was already hands-on with this, she would trust him, but he couldn't do it all on his own, rather there were some things she rather handle personally. Alright, Shisui, I'll trust you in watching over Naruto, but I want you to let me handle monitoring the others in the clan, Makoto said flatly. Shisui rose an eyebrow at Makoto's request demand. He knew Makoto was more than capable and he could use as much help as he could get. But something told him there was something more she wasn't telling him. In any case, he would trust her. He nodded his head in agreement. No problem. Oh, and Shisui, if Naruto ever learns about this he might get the wrong idea, so be careful, Makoto warned. Shisui tensed at that. The last thing he wanted was Naruto to believe he was being used. That would cut deeper than any kunai could. But he had no intention of telling Naruto about any of this. It was better that way, he didn't need to be involved. He just had to keep Fugaku at bay until it was time to act. Don't worry, I can handle it. We should get out this ally now, looks too suspicious. That is, unless there was another reason why you brought me here, he said suggestively, while wiggling his brow. Makoto was quite a beauty after all. Makoto's eye twitched. I'm going to pretend you never said that. Naruto laid back on the soft green grass, a calm look on his face. A shaggy tree shading him from the sun's heat. A large blue lake encircled the field. A soft wind blew in, making small waves in the lake. He enjoyed calm scenery like this. He remembered Musashi telling him about the Uzumaki village that he grew up in and how it stood on one of the most beautiful islands in the elemental nations. He wanted to see it for himself one day, even if the village no longer stood. Noticing a stone on the ground, he picked it up. He sat up and threw the stone into the lake and watched as it skidded across the water, skipping once, twice, 3 times before sinking into the depths below. Hearing a swoosh next to him, he watched another stone skip across the lake, but unlike his, it managed to skip a 4th time. Turning his head, he looked annoyed at the amusing look on Itachi's face. A small smile formed on Itachi's face. He took a seat next to the blonde. They didn't say anything and simply enjoyed the peace. That was something they had in common. They both enjoyed quiet environments. After a few minutes, the silence was broken by Itachi. "Looks to me like you're enjoying yourself. Are you slacking on your training?" he said teasingly. Naruto chuckled. "Well, wasn't it you that said a good shinobi knows not to wear themselves out and when to rest?" "True, but since when did you start listening to anything I say?" Itachi countered. They continued to look over the lake in silence. Looking at Naruto of the corner of his eye, Itachi noticed that Naruto seemed to be lost in thought. "Something on your mind?" he asked curiously. Naruto continued to stare out at the lake but answered. "The Uchiha in the district, they still have that look in their eyes when they stare at you as if you were the enemy. Oh, you're still concerned with that? It's like I said, don't worry how they look at you, they're just not accustomed to you yet." Naruto shook his head. "I wasn't talking about me, I was talking about everyone else, the rest of the village. It's as if they're alienated from the rest of the village." Itachi frowned. Shisui told Naruto was asking more questions and getting more curious. It was to be expected, but he wished he wouldn't pry deeper. "The clan has been having some political disputes with the council. It happens all time, not just with the Uchiha, but with other clans too. It's natural when clan ideals interject with the villages. As a result, people start feel resentment," Itachi said. He knew Naruto was very intelligent despite his young age. He would have to at least tell him some of the truth. Anything other than that and he would know he was not being honest and would ask more questions. Naruto frowned. He understood the logic of the complexity of village politics, but Itachi was still vague with his answer and didn't truly tell him what exactly was the problem. But there was something else he discovered. Something that he wouldn't accept a vague answer. "Itachi, why are members of the Anbu Black Ops watching the Uchiha district?" Itachi's eyes widened. To think that he could actually detect the hidden Anbu, he thought. That was very impressive perception. Naruto was also part Uzumaki and he knew some members of the clan had great sensory abilities. He wondered if perhaps Naruto had gained some of that talent. The serious look on Naruto's face told him he wanted the real answer and wouldn't stand for a half-assed one. But he would not tell him truth. At the same time, he wanted to put Naruto's prying to rest, so he needed to come up with a believable answer. Lucky for him, he was quite the quick thinker. "The Uchiha police force is being under investigation." "For what?" Naruto asked, now intrigued. "There have been complaints about the use of excessive force and false arrest. Also, the village is evaluating the efficiency of how they use their resources because there are those who wish to cut the size of the force in favor of the village's own patrols," Itachi explained. He actually told him some of the truth. Naruto thought over what Itachi said. "And where do you stand on the issue?" he asked. Itachi was silent for a moment before speaking. "I think the Uchiha have the right to govern what was assigned to them," Itachi said simply. "I have seen Shisui walking in town with Aimi. Have you met her?" Itachi asked. The question was meant to change the subject. Naruto sensed that Itachi no longer wanted to talk about serious issues. "Yes, I have, she seems nice. Shisui is usually around trying to woo her." "Speaking of girls, why don't you have a girlfriend? The prodigy of the Uchiha, surely there are a lot of girls seeking your affections," Naruto asked teasingly. Itachi sighed and shook his head. "No, I can't." The possibility of having a lover had crossed his mind but would be impossible given his obligations to the clan. He would never be able to drag anyone else down his path. It was his alone. "Can't huh? Oh, you mean that you're," Naruto said suggestively, a smirk on his face. He loved getting under Itachi's skin, something he picked up from Shisui. Itachi's eye twitched in annoyance. This must be a side of Naruto he picked up from his mother. He enjoyed pissing people off. Something only him and Shisui could do. Curse Shisui for rubbing off on him. Itachi sighed. "No, I just don't have the time for something like that. I'd best be going now, I have to prepare for a mission." Naruto frowned as he watched Itachi begin to leave. Suddenly he remembered something he wanted to ask Itachi. "Hey Itachi, you never told me why you decided to join the Anbu." Itachi rose an eyebrow. "You sure are asking a lot of questions today," he said amusingly. Naruto shrugged. "I spent a lot of time with Shisui, but I don't get to spend much time with you because you're always running off, kind of like right now." Itachi ignored the jab and though over his question, mulling over how to answer it. Self-sacrifice, a nameless shinobi who protects peace from within its shadow. That was the true mark of a shinobi. Shisui taught me that, he said before disappearing in a body flicker. Naruto stood thinking over Itachi's words. 1 year later, the room was tensed as everyone present knew what was at stake. Hiruzen scratched his goatee, a small sigh leaving his lips. It was times like this when he wished he wasn't the Hokage. He was seated in one of the meeting rooms at the Hokage Tower. Also present were the elders, Homura and Koharu, along with Danzo Shimura. He had lost count of the number of times they had met here in the week alone. The situation was crucial and could change the future of Konoha forever. Our Anbu have kept Uchiha under surveillance for some time now. They have reported a highly alert and tensed atmosphere among them. They also confirmed that they have been conducting secret meetings. But they have yet to uncover any validation of their involvement in the Kyuubi accident, Hiruzen said. Danzo scoffed at the word accident. Why must he continue to use such naive terms? It angered him to no end. There was nothing accidental about this. It was not the work of nature but a well-planned event by the Uchiha. He was sure of it. Be that as it may, we can't ignore the amount of distrust and loathing the Uchiha have shown towards the village, Homura argued. Koharu frowned. The Uchiha have discovered that we are spying on them, she stated flatly. It seems we have underestimated them, Homura mused. Danzo wasn't surprised. You couldn't deceive a clan like the Uchiha for long, they would find out eventually. It didn't matter though, he didn't expect the Anbu to uncover anything significant. Once they got word that they were being spied on, they would become more cautious in their activities. That is why they recruited Itachi, he was the key. As long as they had him in the inside, they had the advantage. The Uchiha were such a resolute and loyal clan. The fact that Itachi's loyalty to the village was greater than his loyalty to the clan was truly a blessing for Konoha and curse to the Uchiha. We can't afford to be lenient now, Hiruzen, too much is at stake. The way they have been speaking about Konoha can already be considered treason, Danzo said harshly. Homura and Koharu nodded their heads agreement. Hiruzen sighed. They have yet to make any direct threats against the village, so I can't see it as such, he reasoned. He wasn't naive enough to think that the Uchiha wouldn't try to make a move to gain power, but he still believed that the dispute could be solved diplomacy. He wanted to avoid bloodshed at all cost. In any case, we must wait for Itachi to gather more intel before we make any hasty decisions, Homura said. The others nodded in agreement. Danzo did not object. Making a move now would be counterproductive to their undercover intelligence mission. But he was not like Hiruzen, he was no fool. The Uchiha were too brazen of a clan to stand still, diplomacy was futile. It was not a question of if but when. He would be prepared, even Hiruzen wasn't. And what shall we tell the clan heads? They're beginning to get suspicious, Koharu asked. Nothing, they must not be told anything, Hiruzen said strictly. As of now they sense some tension growing between the Uchiha and the council, but they do not know about our spying or anything else we discussed here. Informing them would only increase tensions. Hiruzen is right, we must keep them in the dark to maintain stability in Konoha, Danzo said in a rare showing of agreement with his longtime rival. A knock on the door interrupted their conversation. You may enter, Hiruzen said. The door opened and in came Iruka. He took notice of the Hokage and the elders in the room, the latter giving him blank looks. The young Chunin gulped, feeling out of place. He could sense the tensions and assumed they were discussing something important. He quickly bowed. Forgive me for my intrusion, Hokage-sama, you weren't in your office, so I looked here. I wasn't aware you were in a meeting, he said apologetically. Hiruzen waved off his apology. It's alright, Iruka, what is that you need? He asked inwardly, not minding a break from the tension. I was scheduled to give you a report on my students in the academy today, but I can come back another time. No, there's no need, we were just about finished here anyway, he said, giving the others a look. Koharu and Homura simply stood up and left without a fuss, but the look on their faces showed that were not pleased at being interrupted. Looking at Danzo, Hiruzen frowned. He was still here. I too wish to hear Iruka's report. I want to make sure Konoha's next generation is up to par, Danzo said. The Hokage's eyes narrowed. He knew Danzo too well to think that was the only reason he wanted to listen in. He most likely wanted to know more about Naruto, but it didn't matter, he would keep an eye on him. Very well, Iruka, take a seat, Hiruzen said, motioning to the seat across from him. Iruka nodded and sat down. He placed a file on the table in front of him. The file contained the names of all of his students in the academy. As you know, I've been assigned a large amount of students from clans this year. The Hokage nodded, remembering when he and his advisors assigned Iruka his roster of students. He also remembered how overwhelmed the young Chunin felt when he learned that many of his students were clan heirs. Iruka knew he would be observed closely by the clans to see if they approved of his teaching abilities. He assured him that he could handle it and that he trusted his teaching abilities. Just give us a brief report on the top students, we don't have time right now to go through all of them, Danzo said curtly. Iruka looked at Danzo, then to the Hokage, who simply nodded. Very well. Iruka shuffled through a stack of profiles. He took 9 of them and placed them on top of the stack. Let's start with Shikamaru Nara, he said, placing his profile on top of the others. His stats are actually not that high. His test scores in written tests are especially low, but it isn't because of a lack of ability. He is actually very intelligent when he is motivated. I estimate that his written test scores might be the highest if he were to put in the effort. His ninjutsu and taijutsu would be about average. Hiruzen nodded, expecting as much, thinking of another lazy Nara that was his Jonin commander. Danzo simply listened on quietly. Next we have Shino Aburam. His scores are overall pretty good. His written test scores are about the same as his taijutsu and ninjutsu. I expect good things out of him, Iruka praised. Pulling out another profile, Iruka continued. Kiba Inzuka's written scores are decent, but his best attribute is his taijutsu, which ranked amongst one of the highest. Although he is easily distracted and could learn to have more patience, Iruka explained. Sakura Haruno is one of the highest ranked kunoichis when it comes to academics, which is her greatest strength. She also showed good chakra control when performing the academy jutsus. Her physical abilities though could use much improvement. Her greatest weakness is her lack of interest in improving her skills in favor of other trivial things, Iruka said dejectedly. Hiruzen sighed, you just couldn't expect everyone to have greater maturity at that age. Danzo inwardly scowled. This is why he thought that proper shinobi value should be hammered into the young as earlier as possible. Ino Yamanka has similar abilities to Sakura, although her academic scores aren't as high as hers. We are hoping that her clan techniques will eventually make up for the difference though. Sadly, like Sakura, she too shows a lack of maturity that impedes her growth as a ninja. Next we have Hinata Hyuga, has shown to be a good all-around kunoichi in the class. Her scores are good in all categories, especially her taijutsu, which not surprising given that she is a Hyuga. The only thing bringing her down is her lack of self-confidence. I would expect Hiashi has great expectations for her, being his daughter and a main branch member, Hiruzen mused. What of Sasuke Uchiha? Iruka pulled Sasuke's file out. Sasuke Uchiha, his scores are the highest across the board. He has shown to have great talent in practically every area and well, the numbers speak for themselves, he said, showing them his file. Danzo nodded, as expected of one from the Uchiha clan, although he has ways to go if he is to catch up to his brother's level. Danzo said. Hiruzen nodded in agreement. The son of Fugaku is skilled, he will have a bright future, Hiruzen mused. Most likely not, Danzo thought cunningly to himself. What about Naruto Uzumaki? Has he made the list? Hiruzen asked. Yes, he has. I was saving him for last because, well, you see, he's a special case, Iruka said, his face becoming slightly more serious. Yes, I'm well aware that Naruto is not like the other kids. What are you getting at? Hiruzen asked curiously. Okage-sama, I think you misunderstand. I'm not referring to that, Iruka corrected, thinking that he was referring to the Kyuubi sealed within Naruto. Here, take a look at his score sheet. Hiruzen took it and looked it over. There were high marks across the board in all categories, from taijutsu to ninjutsu. Based on these scores it goes without question that Naruto is very talented, but his scores are pretty consistent, there doesn't seem to be much improvement over the year. I thought so too. Naruto has always been a good student and with his talent, I would expect him to improve significantly by now. But his scores for the most part stay the same. Hiruzen frowned, you think he's holding back his true abilities? He asked. Iruka nodded, that is what I thought, so I started watching him closer, but to his credit, it did seem like he was giving his best efforts. I asked him about it and he assured me that he was trying his best. He doesn't say much in class and is very reserved, so it's difficult to get a good read on him. But I still can't help but feel like he is holding back, Iruka explained with a frown. Danzo of course was not surprised, already knowing that Naruto was far stronger than he showed, but he had to give Naruto credit for masking his abilities. It seems the boy knows the importance of deception in the shinobi world, he inwardly praised. Hiruzen sighed. On one hand he was proud of Naruto for learning an important aspect of being a shinobi, but this also meant that he didn't trust him. He realized now that he was underestimating Naruto. He had to keep a closer eye on him. Despite his efforts to befriend Naruto, it seemed that it was not possible. The boy was too guarded and that would have been the best way to monitor him. As much as he wanted to honor Minato's wish of helping his son, he was still the village's Jinchuriki, that was a fate he could not escape, thus he had to be restricted if need be. Still, he wouldn't give Naruto to Danzo, he didn't share the man's beliefs and stringent methods. As Hokage, this was his responsibility. Iruka, tell me, what do you think of Naruto? Hiruzen asked curiously, he knew that Iruka was reluctant to be Naruto's instructor, given that the tailed beast that killed his parents lived inside Naruto. His presence caused memories he long wished to forget to come back and haunt him. Iruka sighed, yes, admittedly, I thought Naruto would be too much of a hassle for me to teach because it would bring back unwanted memories. But I realized that I couldn't let that get in the way of my pledge to teach the next generation of Konoha shinobi to the best of my ability. And to treat each student equally, Iruka said passionately. I see, so you no longer hold resentment for Naruto. asked Hiruzen. Iruka shook his head. No, I realized that it was foolish on my part to hold a grudge against him for something that wasn't his fault. And given from what I've seen from him, he's done nothing to show that he's a bad person as some have claimed. Iruka said honestly. Hiruzen was pleased to hear that Iruka was able to understand what so many others in the village could not. Very well then, you both are dismissed, Hiruzen said. Naruto stood in the center of a dark room, only a small beam of light originating from the ceiling kept the room from complete darkness. The light shined down on a small cylinder-shaped platform at the center of the room. Attached to it were multiple wires that were in turn attached to numerous fully loaded kunai launchers stationed around the ceiling. He looked up and observed the launchers. The number of them were definitely intimidating. He closed his eyes in concentration. This type of training was extremely dangerous even for the most skilled shinobi. He overheard Shisui reminding Itachi about the time when he recklessly attempted this type of training. Shisui had warned him not to get any ideas, but he should have known better to actually think he would listen. Naruto opened his eyes, his now fully developed Sharingan active. He launched 2 kunai at the wires, severing them and instantly, releasing a barrage of kunyas down upon him. Naruto waited for them to get close before quickly backflipping into the air. The kunyas struck the ground where he just stood in a large clang of metal. A second wave of kunais rapidly approached him mid-air. He quickly reached into his holster and grabbed a kunai between each of his fingers. This was not like the shuriken jutsu target training he did in the woods. One mistake here and it could be the end. He released his kunais into the air, clashing them with the incoming projectiles that came from all directions. He angled his descending body towards the rail of a small balcony. Landing on the rail, he immediately pushed off of it, avoiding the last remaining kunai that struck it. He pulled his knees towards chest and spun in the air, descending towards the platform. Suddenly he felt a swish of a kunai behind him. He cursed, a bonus one. There was one more that released late on purpose to catch him in an off-guard position. He extended his arms and legs out and turned his body just the right time as the kunai flew by him, inches from piercing his chest. He landed on the platform in a crouched position. Naruto let out a small sigh of relief that was too close for comfort. He suddenly felt a presence behind and looked back and was surprised to see Iruka, his academy instructor, looking at him with pure shock, his eyes wide. Iruka just left the meeting with Hokage and made his way back to the academy to return the student files and lock up the building for the night. Once he entered the academy though, he was alarmed to hear the sounds coming from the basement of the academy. He knew there was a training room down there meant to be used by highly skilled shinobi, but it was rarely ever used, let alone this late at night. He went to investigate and couldn't believe what he saw. Iruka stared at Naruto, his mouth gaping. The only thing that shocked him more than the incredible display he never knew his student was capable of was the Sharingan eyes staring back at him. "And nah, Naruto, you," Iruka stuttered, not knowing what to say. Naruto kept his composure and looked at Iruka impassively. He closed his eyes and then opened them, his Sharingan spinning, staring into Iruka's eyes. Iruka felt his body go numb and his body began to slump to the floor. Naruto quickly body flickered next to Iruka and caught him before he could hit the ground, avoiding making any more noise. Just before Iruka's eyes closed, Naruto whispered into his ear, "It's just a dream. I should have been more aware," he inwardly scolded himself. Avoiding those kunai took all his concentration and he didn't sense Iruka's presence. He couldn't let anyone he didn't trust know about his Sharingan, not yet anyway. He mused over what he should do with Iruka. He didn't know where the Chunin lived and didn't feel like it was worth his effort in finding out. Picking up a scar-nosed Chunin and placing him over his shoulder, he carried him into their academy classroom. He placed him down in the chair in front of Iruka's desk, his head slumped down on the desk. Hopefully Iruka would wake up and just think he fell asleep grading papers or something. He left the academy, his hands in his pockets, as walked down the village streets. Thinking back to his training, he was pleased that he was successful in first attempt. He was not only training in Shuriken Jutsu, but also training with his now fully developed Sharingan. He unlocked it during one of his training session with Shisui. Shisui had praised him for awakening it fully at a young age. He was age 9 now, his skills increased greatly in a year. Shisui had taught him many of the Uchiha clan's jutsu and techniques that he had adopted into his fighting style. True to Shisui's word, fire style came naturally to him as a testament to his Uchiha blood. He also aimed to improve his use of wind style, but he had to rely on the few scrolls Musashi left him and his own experimenting, as neither Shisui or Itachi had any affinity for the scarce element. "You there, stop for a moment." Turning around, he was met by a brown-haired shinobi that he recognized as a member of the police force by his flak jacket. "Naruto Uzumaki?" the Uchiha asked. "Yay, you have a message from the Uchiha clan." He reached into his vest pocket and handed him a scroll before vanishing in a body flicker. Naruto accepted the scroll and opened it. His eyes widened slightly as he read over its contents. "Well, how about that?" Feeling a burning sensation run through his fingertips, Naruto dropped the scroll. To his shock, the scroll combusted in his hands, burning into tiny ashes, then disappearing in the wind before it could hit the ground. He frowned. This scroll was set up to be destroyed after it was read, which meant they didn't want others to know about this meeting. This also explained why his presence was requested now, just past midnight, when very few people were out in public. Such a meeting had to be devious in nature, immediately raising alarm. But then again, nearly all shinobi activity could be considered devious in this world. Strangely enough, he wasn't deterred for some reason. It must have been his honest curiosity. But what was this strange feeling he got? Was there something else that drew him in? He shook his head, he would get his answers soon enough. But that thought in mind, he walked off to his new destination. To meet with the clan head of the Uchiha himself. Uchiha Fugaku. After a short sprint above the rooftops, he soon arrived at the Uchiha district and saw the Uchiha from earlier standing by the gate. Noting his arrival, the Uchiha scowled. "Hurry up, it's rude to keep a clan head waiting," he said gruffly. "Well, since I'm the honored guest, I'm sure he won't mind," Naruto said nonchalantly. The Uchiha let out a grunt of annoyance. What did Fugaku want with this brat anyway? But orders were orders, so he motioned him to follow him. He led them to center of the Uchiha district and soon arrived at the steps of a large building that Naruto recognized as the police force headquarters by the insignia on the top of the building. Standing outside the building were 5 members of the police force. The squad leader, noticing their arrival, turned and faced them. He eyed Naruto for a moment before shifting his gaze to the messenger. "Fugaku-sama wants to see him alone." The messenger nodded and took his leave, seeing his job was done. Naruto ignored the stern and curious looks the squad gave him and silently walked up the door. He turned the handle and entered the building. Looking around, he saw that he was in a large dimly lit hallway. The police force crest was boldly displayed on both walls. His eyes trailed to the far end of the hall where he spotted Fugaku staring out a window. He walked up to him. "You wanted to see me?" Naruto asked. Fugaku remained silent, seemingly in thought. He waited a moment for Fugaku to address him, but still getting no response. His patience growing thin, he made to speak again, but stopped just as Fugaku turned around. His face was stoic, showing no immediate reaction to his presence. It annoyed him to a small extent. It was as if he had no doubt he would have showed up. "Follow me," Fugaku said simply and walked down the hall. Normally anyone would be put off by such a bare greeting, especially from a clan head, but he knew better than to expect anything less from Fugaku Uchiha. He followed Fugaku down the hallway, passing a few doors before arriving at what he assumed to be his office. It was a circular medium-sized room slightly smaller than the Hokage's briefing room. A bookshelf, a few chairs and an oak desk furnished the room. Fugaku walked around the desk and took a seat. He motioned for him to do the same. Naruto took a seat across from him. Once he was seated, Fugaku's features seemed to soften. His eyes lost their sternness and his stiff lips curled into a smile, or at least what looked to be a smile. It was a peculiar sight. "Naruto, it's good to see that you came. I hope I didn't interrupt something important?" Fugaku asked. Naruto waved off his concern with a shake of his head. Fugaku nodded. "That's good, it's nice to be able to meet you in a more formal setting." That's right, he had ran into the Uchiha clan head a few times when he was with Shisui. But it was nothing more than a few quick greetings. Mostly non-verbal. Normally he wouldn't have bothered, but Shisui insisted that it was proper courtesy to greet the clan head in his own compound. If anything, to at least avoid possible confrontations. He had never cared for any more communication than that, and apparently vice versa. So what was this? "Yes, I suppose it is, but let's not well off course. I'm curious to know why you requested to see me?" Naruto asked flatly. Fugaku stared blankly at him. He wasn't one known to have a kind disposition, but he figured he would try a friendly approach. But it seemed that Naruto wasn't interested in making small talk. Straight to the point, "I can respect that. Very well, I'll cut to the chase. This concerns your future with the Uchiha clan," Fugaku said frankly. Naruto's eyes narrowed, he wasn't expecting that. "My future with the Uchiha? Oh, and here I thought you were going to tell me to never show my face in the Uchiha district again," he said harshly. Fugaku frowned. "What makes you think that?" Naruto chuckled dryly. "That's a dumb question." Fugaku scowled. He was a reputable shinobi. His clansmen held him in high regard and always addressed him with respect. Even the other clan heads, despite their differences, held respect for his position. Suffice to say, he wasn't used to being talked to so offhandedly by a child, no less. It was ridiculous and he probably would have laughed if he was not himself. But this was no laughing matter. The future of the Uchiha clan was at stake. He held his tongue and thought over his response. He had to be calm. Unlike his subordinates, he had no pull on Naruto, not yet anyway. "Look, I understand that we may not be the most cordial clan in Konoha, but we have to be that way for our own safety. These are difficult times for the Uchiha," Fugaku explained. "So I've heard," Naruto replied. "Ah, so you're aware, Shisui must have informed you," he stated as if was fact. Naruto felt no need to correct him. But I'm curious, how much did he tell you? Fugaku asked. Naruto's eyes roamed around the room looking at the different items on the shelves and walls. Just that the village higher-ups and the Uchiha clan are having disagreements, he said, as his eyes landed on a stack of what seemed to be case files on Fugaku's desk. Fugaku noticed his gaze, his lips twitched. That's a very diplomatic way of putting it, perhaps you have a future in politics, Fugaku said amusingly. Naruto sighed, look, we can dance around this all day. I thinks it's pretty clear you want my presence to be associated with the clan for some gain. Perhaps political gain of having the village Jinchuriki under your control. Whatever the reason, you don't know anything about me, so stop pretending like you do, he said harshly. Fugaku's expression didn't change. He was expecting such a reaction. Shisui had warned him that Naruto had not gained the trust of the Uchiha clan yet, and it would be a mistake to push him at this point. But time wasn't in their favor. He made the decision to speed things up. Looking at Naruto now, he could tell that Shisui was right. Whatever bond he formed with Shisui didn't extend to the clan like he'd hoped it would. He also saw firsthand how stubborn the boy could be. And his intellect was as great as it was said to be. A young genius that had a lot of potential. Jinchuriki or not, the boy could have been an excellent Uchiha. But he lacked discipline and respect for authority, traits that he held in high regard. Still, the boy hadn't shown interest. But he came prepared for this situation. He still had his trump card after all. Actually, I know a lot more about you than you think, Naruto Namikaze, Fugaku said knowingly. Naruto rose an eyebrow, not expecting him to bring up his father. But he stayed calm. So you know who my father is. That's not surprising given that you are from the same generation as him. A few people are bound to know, he said unimpressed. Fugaku shook his head. I didn't just knew of him, I knew him personally. Your mother Kushina as well. Naruto stared at him with a look that Fugaku deduced as skepticism, but also some curiosity. I knew your parents since we were young. I'll be honest, I wasn't exactly friends with them from the start, more so acquaintances. When Minato became the Hokage and I became the clan head, our interactions increased naturally. My wife was already friends with your mother, and that helped our families grow closer. Your parents were good people. I am truthful when I say Minato was a Hokage I could respect. Unfortunately, his reign was cut short. I knew he would have done the village well if would have lived. Naruto remained silent, his expression becoming unreadable. Not many knew of your mother's pregnancy as it was kept on the down low for security. After your parents died, the third Hokage quickly ordered those who knew of your relation to the fourth to be silent for your own protection. I compiled, following the Hokage's orders. However, I'm sure you know that the Hokage's decision isn't always the right one. Looking at you now, I can see that it holds true. They wanted to keep you safe, make you loyal, yet the lies and deception have only made you harbor distrust and hatred, Fugaku said knowingly. Naruto's eyes hardened.